Chapter 1271. Bei Yunj, what are you trying to do? Chao Yingying mustered up her courage and asked. But the next moment, Bei Yunj glanced at her coldly and Chao Yingying didn't dare to say another word. Bei Yunj sneered and turned to look at Hai Ning's pale face. Hai Ning's fearful eyes seemed to be saying that the person in front of her was a lunatic. And those who didn't know what was going on would think that Bei Yunj was doing something violent to Hai Ning. You're not going to continue? Then I'll continue. Bei Yunj turned around and leaned forward with one hand on the armrest of the chair. The smile in his eyes made one's scalp tingle. Do you think I'm a lunatic? Then why don't you know that a lunatic has no bottom line? After saying that, Bei Yunj straightened her back and pulled a towel from the side. She slowly wiped her hands and threw it at Hai Ning's face. Hai Ning trembled. The girl tilted her head and glanced at her coldly. She was unruly and arrogant. Su Xianing entered the dormitory with a book of questions and saw this scene. What was going on? Was she being lectured by a big shot? Chao Yingying, who was usually the most arrogant, couldn't even let out a fart. Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Su Xianing wasn't afraid of Bei Yunj because she knew that as long as she didn't touch Bei Yunj's bottom line, Bei Yunj's temper was very good. However, Bei Yunj was probably in a bad mood today. He glanced at her and said casually, what can I do? Do you? Su Xianing, Bei Yunj, this B** starred was simply too much. So flirtatious. After saying that, Bei Yunj took his clothes and went to take a shower, leaving Su Xianing scolding him. After taking a shower, when Bei Yunj walked out, he found that Hai Ning and the others were gone. Only Su Xianing was left. I just heard Hai Ning say that she is preparing to move out of the dormitory. Did you deal with her? Su Xianing asked. Bei Yunj sighed and leaned lazily against the door to think about it. Maybe. Su Xianing, I'll go downstairs to buy something later. What do you want to eat? Bei Yunj was wiping her wet black hair. Her aura was cold and pleasant. Mango. Su Xianing raised her head abruptly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, then turned back and said lightly, no, change it. Su Xianing was instantly angry. Do you want to go against me? Bei Yunj put on his jacket and picked up his phone. He looked at her leisurely and said, I don't want to hear you crying in pain by my side tomorrow as if I did something wrong. These words made Su Xianing remember that these 2 days were her period. Last time, because she ate a mango, she was in so much pain that she cried in her bed. She thought that no one had heard about it. No wonder Bei Yunj brought her a week's worth of brown sugar ginger tea and said that the supermarket next door gave it to her for a promotion. Then I want the ginger tea you bought last time. Su Xianing hugged the pillow awkwardly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, nodded softly and went out. In fact, many people did not know that Su Xianing and Bei Yunj had such a good relationship. In particular, many people in Yunqing High School knew that Su Xianing hated Bei Yunj very much. There were even people on the forum who made bets about when Bei Yunj would beat up Su Xianing, who had a bad temper. In the end, who would have thought that the big boss would bring her roommate brown sugar ginger tea every month? Chapter 1272. After Bei Yunj went out, she bought a big bag of brown sugar ginger tea, wine and cigarettes from the supermarket. However, when she sat by the river and snapped back to her senses, she realized that she was not holding cigarettes but candy. She licked her lips and casually unwrapped a piece of candy. However, she was thinking about the project that was difficult to get closer to. Bei Yunj was indeed not in a good mood these 2 days because she was at a bottleneck. Everyone had a bottleneck period and she was no exception. In her previous life, when she was at a bottleneck, she had only stopped experimenting for half a year. However, there were already rumors that she had run out of ideas. This time, Zhong Xinglin wanted her to relax for a year or 2 before coming back to break through the bottleneck. After all, Bei Yunj was still too young, and her research results in the past 2 years were indeed shocking. If there was no bottleneck period, could she still be considered human? As for those who knew that she was at a bottleneck, only Si Qingyan was very happy because Bei Yunj was so bored that she could go to the laboratory to help him. A year or 2, Bei Yunj closed her eyes, feeling a little lost. If she gave up on her research, what else could she do? Until the next moment. Bei Yunj had just stood up and was about to go back when a large black shadow appeared out of nowhere and almost pounced on Bei Yunj. She turned around and saw that it was a lass, who had not been successful in losing weight. Bei Yunj looked back and saw the male owner who had allowed the dog to commit murder. Her eyes flickered slightly as she looked up at the man not far away. The man was dressed very casually in a simple white t-shirt and short-sleeved shirt. He looked like a classy senior in school, but he was constantly attracting the attention of the people around him. Bei Yunj's hand stopped and she forgot to stroke a lass's fur. She stared blankly at the man's upturned eyes under the sparkling moonlight. His eyes were dark and there was a faint smile on his face. There was a hint of laziness and frivolity. Didn't you say that whoever has food is a father? The man looked at Alas, raised his eyebrows and sneered. He still hasn't acknowledged me. I've raised him for nothing. Bei Yunj snapped back to her senses and asked instinctively, "Are you done?" "Yes." The man responded and took a step forward. Before he could take out what he was hiding behind his back, Bei Yunj suddenly stood up. She walked forward and hugged the man's strong waist. The man was also stunned for a moment. Then he couldn't help but chuckle. He reached out and rubbed the girl's head as if to comfort her. "You haven't been able to get through to me for 7 days, and you're taking advantage of me as soon as we meet. Yin?" When Bei Yunj heard this, she realized that her phone might have been in arrears. "Don't you have something to do overseas?" When the words came out of her mouth, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at Hoshidu again. She thought her tone was quite cold. However, in the man's eyes, it was more like she was acting coquettishly. "What?" Hoshidu bent down and leaned closer to her, pretending that he did not hear her clearly. The cold and familiar scent made one's heart pound like a drum. Bei Yunj immediately thought of the kissing scene in the Japanese drama that her roommates had watched before. Before this, Bei Yunj had always thought that such cultural passion was free. However, at this moment, Bei Yunj's expression did not look too good. "How did you greet people when you were in the Fernan's family?" "Huh?" Hoshidu glanced at Bei Yunj and quickly reacted. The corners of his thin red lips curled up again. An ordinary kissing ceremony. "Bei Yunj, this man was not manly. How many have you kissed?" Bei Yunj looked straight at him. Chapter 1273. Hoshidu suppressed the smile on his lips and said to her, "I've never counted." Bei Yunj's good-looking face was stiff, but because of the anger in her eyes, it inexplicably became more lively. But actually, Hoshidu saw that he was almost done teasing her. He bent down and stared straight at his little girl. His slender and well-defined hand gently lifted her chin. The next moment, before Bei Yunj could react, the man suddenly leaned close to her and kissed her cheek gently with his thin red lips. He left behind a warm and heart-trembling sensation. Without waiting for her to react, the man curled his lips and turned sideways again to kiss Bei Yunj's other cheek. At this moment, Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess and her entire body stiffened. However, the man licked the corner of his lips and the sound of his chuckle landed beside Bei Yunj's ear. It was even more ambiguous and lecherous as he used his fingers to gently wipe the cheek that he had just kissed. "I've only kissed one person since I became an adult. I still don't really remember." The man's low and magnetic voice was bewitching and deadly. His peach blossom eyes were deep and dark as he stared straight at her moist red lips. "Was this how you kissed me just now, Yin?" Instantly, Bei Yunj felt her ears burning. Seeing that she was silent, the man asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" Bei Yunj did not even raise her head. Her tone sounded very calm. "Shameless." Soon, the man could not help but laugh. He unconsciously bent down and gently leaned his head against Bei Yunj's neck. The light laughter and the man's slightly trembling shoulders made Bei Yunj's ears even hotter. "What?" The man's peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles, as if he was constantly flirting with her. "You're shameless like this? Yin, you're too strict with me." As soon as he finished speaking, Bei Yunj finally reacted. She was surrounded by young couples who were kissing passionately. Bei Yunj, who suddenly came to her senses, suddenly remembered that this was the sacred dating ground for couples at Yin University. He had unknowingly walked here just now. But soon Bei Yunj looked up at Hoshidu. "Why are you here?" When the man heard this, his laughter faded. He lazily scratched her chin. "Isn't that what I should be asking you?" Bei Yunj. When he first came over, Hoshidu also saw a few boys holding roses and following behind Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj was eating candy and sitting by the bridge. No one knew what she was thinking. She looked impatient, so no one dared to go over. "This flower is for me?" Bei Yunj saw the flowers in Hoshidu's hands and quietly changed the topic. At the same time, she took the large bouquet of roses from the man's hands. When the surrounding people accidentally saw this scene, they almost cried out in surprise. Was the one by the riverside in the dating Holy Land the top scorer of this batch of freshmen? However, Bei Yunj frowned. She did not like other people paying attention to Hoshidu, so she simply pulled Hoshidu along another dimly lit path. However, the large bouquet of roses blocked her view. Bei Yunj accidentally stepped on a smooth cobblestone and almost fell. However, a moment ago, the man casually supported Bei Yunj's forearm. Bei Yunj also subconsciously hugged Huashidu's waist. She could even feel the man's firm and warm abs. Pei Qian had a bad feeling. As expected. Then she heard the man ask slowly, "What are you doing, Yunyan?" Then the man's light words entered Bei Yunj's ears. "Pervert. Bei Yunj." Chapter 1274. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. Before she could say anything, she heard the man's next sentence with a slow chuckle. "Yunyan, I understand that you're young and impetuous, but you're too impatient. You can do whatever you want when we get to the apartment." Bei Yunj, what nonsense was he talking about? However, in the next moment, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered the brown sugar ginger tea in her bag. "No, I want to go back to the dormitory." Huashidu turned to look at her, as if waiting for her to explain the reason. "My roommate wants to drink brown sugar ginger tea." Bei Yunj looked at her watch and carried a big bouquet of roses. She handed the dog leash to Huashidu and turned to leave quickly. "Brother, I'll look for you for dinner tomorrow." The man stood where he was and watched the girl leave. His good-looking eyebrows slowly raised. Then he lowered his head and looked at Alas. He squatted down and scratched Alas's chin with his well-defined hand. He said casually and lazily, "Tell me, why did you follow such a little scumbag?" No one knew if he was a human or a dog when he said this. On that day, the people on the forum went crazy. Their University school belle was actually having a private meeting with someone in the sacred land of lovers? However, the photos that everyone took were not very clear. They could only see that the other party was good-looking from a blurry perspective. He had completely crushed their school hunk, Cheng Zihuai. When did our school have such a handsome guy? The top scholar's father's eyes are so sharp. Through the original poster's high-resolution lens, I can feel that the senior is so handsome. But isn't our school hunk Cheng Zihuai? But the looks of the top scholar's father directly beat all the boys in the school. Crying face. "What do you mean, upstairs? This is too much." Although the upstairs' words are very hurtful, he is indeed so handsome. When I walked past him, the senior was so handsome that my heart raced. I forgot to secretly take photos. He's definitely not from our school. He might be a senior from Beichuan next door. I have to hurry and ask my best friend in Beichuan. However, the onlookers searched for an entire night, but they could not find this handsome senior on Beichuan University's forum. On the other side, as soon as Bei Yunj returned to the dormitory, Su Xianing was lying on the bed without a care for her image. Her face was oily as she played games. "Come down and drink." Bei Yunj threw the plastic bag on the table. His tone was no different from calling a dog. Su Xianing did not mind. "Daddy Pei, help me soak." Bei Yunj squinted at her. "Is your hand broken?" "I'm playing games." Bei Yunj put down her backpack and tore open the packaging with one hand. She made ginger tea for Su Xianing and replied to Huashidu's message. Not long after. Out of the corner of her eye, Su Xianing saw a big bouquet of roses on Bei Yunj's table. A rose of such quality would probably be priceless. Su Xianing lowered her head and continued to play the game. However, she was muttering in her heart, "Guys nowadays are really willing to spend a lot of money to chase after goddesses." However, it was also the first time that Bei Yunj was willing to accept flowers. It was quite strange. However, Su Xianing did not expect that her roommate, who was so arrogant every day, would reject the temptation of a man just to come back and make ginger tea for her. After playing the game, Su Xianing browsed the forum and got out of bed to get the ginger tea. Only then did she see a post by Bei Yunj. A few minutes later, Su Xianing froze and slowly turned to look at Bei Yunj. "Bei Yunj, did your boyfriend give you those roses?" Chapter 1275. Bei Yunj paused for a moment before she glanced at her calmly and said slowly, "What's the matter?" Wasn't not denying it equivalent to admitting it? Su Xianing's emotions were complicated. "Then where's your boyfriend?" "I asked him to go back." "Doesn't he have to bring you ginger tea?" Su Xianing suddenly felt like a green tea who had interfered in someone else's relationship. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj would ask her boyfriend to go back just to bring her ginger tea. What kind of immortal roommate relationship was this? "Your boyfriend didn't say anything?" Su Xianing's tone was even more complicated. What should I say? Bei Yunj was playing with her phone. After asking the question, she finally regained her senses. She suddenly recalled the scene just now. She seemed to be a little jerk. Su Xianing flipped through the post and asked curiously for first-hand information. "Bei Yunj, which university is your boyfriend from? Which year is he in?" "He graduated a long time ago. He's a student of Neely University." Bei Yunji's mind flashed across the Neely University trophy that old Madame Hua had left behind in the Hua family's old residence. Neely University? Damn, he's also a straight-A student. Su Xianing's eyes lit up with the flames of gossip. She immediately went to Neely University's forum to take a look. I reckon that with your boyfriend's looks, he's definitely the most handsome guy in Neely University. Don't be too concerned about him. Bei Yunji glanced at her lazily and smiled. He's mine. Su Xianing was speechless. So this was not a research big shot who had cut off her love. I have an engagement partner, okay? I'm just curious. Su Xianing raised her head proudly, but after flipping through the posts on Neely University's forum, she was shocked. Wait, Bei Yunji, what's your boyfriend's name? Su Xianing was so shocked that she was almost speechless. She had a feeling that that blurry back view resembled the young CEO of the Hua Corporation, Hua Shidu. Bei Yunji licked her lips. However, he's not considered my boyfriend. He's not your boyfriend? Bei Yunji, is it a waste that you have such a seductive face? After Su Xianing finished speaking, she grabbed Bei Yunji's hand and said, let's go. Charge. If you don't rush, someone will rush in front of you. Bei Yunji raised her eyebrows. Why are you so excited? Aren't I worried for you? Look at your boyfriend's popularity. He has graduated for so many years, but there are still people who can't forget him. After that, Su Xianing handed the phone to Bei Yunji. Bei Yunji took the phone and looked up to see a picture of a man in his late teens. The angle of the photo was obviously a candid shot. The 18 or 19-year-old boy was wearing a refreshing white t-shirt and a black wristband on his wrist. His wet hair was swept back lazily after playing basketball. Through the photo, the boy's playful and lazy peach blossom eyes were electrifying. Compared to the current him, he was even more immature. His eyes were full of vigor, and his youthful aura made people unable to take their eyes off him. It was like an existence of light. Even if such a young man was just passing by, he could make an 18-year-old girl's heart flutter. Indeed, no matter what age or where this man was, he could easily seduce a young girl's soul. After being stunned for a moment, Bei Yunji scrolled down. They were all girls who had confessed to Hua Shidu. From a few years ago until now, there were more than 10,000 posts. Perhaps to some people, the most unforgettable memory of Neely University was this man. Su Xianing was still nagging. To be honest, you have good taste. Such a man is the ideal of the world. Chapter 1276. But you're really something. You can even push such a man aside and not accept his temptation. Are you the female version of Liu Xiaohui? Su Xianing kept praising her when she realized that Bei Yunji was slowly looking up at her. The two of them suddenly looked at each other and the atmosphere fell silent. Su Xianing was speechless. Bei Yunji slowly closed the forum, not letting Su Xianing see it. She heard Pei Shishir say, Student Su, it wasn't easy for us to cultivate such a small friendship. It's better for you to speak less. Su Xianing was speechless. After sleeping on the bed, with one hand behind her head, Bei Yunji casually opened Yun University's forum with her mind wandering. She happened to see the post that had secretly taken photos of her and Hua Shidu. Although it was not taken clearly, it did not stop the girls from Yun University from being enthusiastic about Hua Shidu. F***ck, he's so handsome in such a high-resolution photo that I'm speechless? I'm confident enough to call him hubby. I'm about to faint. Why is he so handsome? Thank you, my heart is racing. Cover mouth and cry. Isn't it just a matter of brother hooking his finger? Ha, sister above, calm down. Consider the feelings of the top scholar's father. I'm dying of laughter. The arts department is saying that Bei Yunji is sticking to Cheng Zihuai. I don't believe it. How blind must she be to give up on such a crazy man? Looking at the netizens on the forum begging for the same thing as her, Bei Yunji was speechless. A few minutes later, he had just changed into his sleeping robe when Hua Shidu, who was working, suddenly received a message. He opened it and saw that it was a message from someone. Brother, don't come to my school next time. It's a little hurtful. Hua Shidu was speechless. What was this child thinking all day long? The next day, Bei Yunji took the party score she had just written and was about to try it out with Song Yao. However, she did not expect to see a group of onlookers on the way. Some people were raising their phones high to take photos. It was obvious that they were joining in the fun. Bei Yunji was not interested. She was about to leave when she heard the boy shout. Song Yao. Ever since I met you, I can't fall in love with anyone else. Can I be your boyfriend? With that said, the boy knelt down on one knee and handed the flowers to Song Yao. Everyone around him was cheering. Promise him. Promise him. Song Yao's expression was not good. She pursed her lips and looked unhappy. The boy who openly confessed was the current president of the student union, Wuxia. He was average-looking and slightly plump, but because he was liked by the teachers, there were many people who complimented him. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any thoughts about relationships right now." Song Yao had just finished speaking when Qin Youjiao, who was wearing a black lace dress, laughed. "Song Yao, why don't you agree first? It's not good to reject him in public." The sarcasm and gloating in Yu Ling's eyes could not be hidden anymore. "Yes, Huji's family is quite rich. Besides, he likes you so much. Song Yao, you should know what's good for you." As a female artiste, Song Yao was quite famous online. If she did not handle it well, Song Yao would definitely be the one scolded. "I won't accept the flowers and I don't plan to accept the person either. Senior Hu, do you understand?" Song Yao asked calmly. These words made Huji's face turn red. Previously, he had even bragged to his friends that his family background was good and he would definitely be able to take Song Yao down. "Anyway, I'm giving this to you." Since Song Yao did not agree, Huji insisted. Chapter 1277. Song Yao was suddenly stuffed with a large bouquet of flowers and Huji reached out to grab Song Yao's arm tightly. Looking at this scene, those who did not know would think that Song Yao had agreed. But in fact, Song Yao could not break free at all. Huji let go. Song Yao's expression darkened. "Song Yao, Huji really likes you." Qin Youjiao smiled coquettishly. "Don't be embarrassed." Only Qin Youjiao knew in her heart that she just couldn't stand these people who were close to Bei Yunj and was taking the opportunity to add insult to injury. Relying on his strength, Huji pulled Song Yao's hand until it was red. He turned around and smiled at everyone. "Thank you for your blessings. I can be with Song Yao." Suddenly, before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj, who had walked over from behind, raised his leg and kicked Huji's but ruthlessly without giving him any face. Huji was caught off guard and fell to the ground in a disheveled state. He screamed. Song Yao had just turned around and before she could react, she heard Bei Yunj say calmly, but his voice was cold. "Give me the flowers." Song Yao gave them to Bei Yunj instinctively. However, in the next second, Bei Yunj took the bouquet of flowers, grabbed Huji's collar with one hand and slapped him. "Classmate, do you know how long she has been with me? Did I agree to be with you?" Bei Yunj slapped him twice and threw the flowers into the rubbish bin ruthlessly. The sound made the crowd who had been watching the commotion tremble in fear. The entire scene was out of control. Who else would dare to be so arrogant as to hit someone in Yun University? There were also people who filmed this scene. Huji's expression did not look good. He felt that it was very embarrassing to be hit by a woman. He was about to do something when Bei Yunj suddenly punched him in the abdomen. Huji's face twitched in pain. "You're quite brave. Are you going to hit me?" Bei Yunj laughed and slowly moved his joints. "Bei Yunj, I'm the president of the student union. My father has a relationship with the Qin family." Before Huji could finish his sentence, Bei Yunj grabbed him by the collar and dragged him straight to the fountain. Before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj pressed Huji's head with one hand and pushed his head into the fountain. Bei Yunj only pulled Huji up after he choked until he was trembling all over. "Who's your father?" "Say it again." Bei Yunj asked slowly. At this moment, Huji's expression was one of terror as he shook his head frantically. "Very good." Bei Yunj nodded. Then he grabbed the drenched Huji and threw him directly in front of Yu Ling. Yu Ling was so scared that she screamed. "I didn't agree. Song Yao can't be with anyone she wants. But since Yu Ling loves him so much, why don't they just get together?" Bei Yunj's question made Yu Ling's face turn pale. Then Bei Yunj continued to look at Qin Youjiao. "Or our classmate Qin Youjiao." Qin Youjiao smiled with a pale face. "Bei Yunj, don't joke around. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Bei Yunj said cynically, "It's not good to reject him in public. My Tian Tian can't agree to him. Why don't student Qin be kind?" Qin Youjiao's face was livid. She knew that Bei Yunj was using her words just now to shut her up. "Or, if student Qin Youjiao isn't willing, why don't you join the crowd just now?" Bei Yunj grabbed Huji's collar and questioned them one by one. Then he sneered. "What? Weren't they all living bodhisattvas who crawled out of the temple just now? Is it your turn to be unhappy?" Chapter 1278. Seeing this, the others dispelled the thought of using the same method to woo their goddess. Bei Yunj licked the corner of his lips and chuckled softly. He slowly glanced at the others. "Is there anyone else who likes my Tian Tian? She's busy, so you don't have to ask her in the future. You can just ask me." However, when everyone thought of the scene of Bei Yunj hitting someone just now, they felt a chill run down their spines. Who the F***ck would dare to pursue Song Yao? Yunj? Song Yao's long eyelashes fluttered before she walked in front of Bei Yunj. At first, everyone thought that Song Yao would comfort Bei Yunj and persuade them to stop the fight. However, they did not expect Song Yao to hand them a handkerchief. She frowned and said, "Wipe yourself first. You're all wet." Everyone was speechless. "Sister Yao, wake up." Was she treating the purebred devil as a little puppy? Bei Yunj wiped himself twice before his eyes landed on Hu Ji carelessly, looking at him with a faint smile. Bei Yunj's smile was unbelievably beautiful, but everyone present shivered. Hu Ji's legs almost turned to jelly and he ran away when no one was paying attention. At this moment, not far away, Lu Yuanxi saw a group of people gathered outside. In the middle of them was Bei Yunj. "Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Where's the proposal?" Bei Yunj was speechless. Song Yao was speechless. Lu Yuanxi looked up and saw that the person beside him was Song Yao. He suddenly felt the strange gazes around him. "I'm joking." Lu Yuanxi's smile froze as he explained, but to the others, it felt like he was trying to hide something. "I finished writing the score. Come and listen to it. See if there's anything that needs to be changed." With that said, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao's eyelids twitched. They looked at each other, feeling a little helpless at the big boss's confidence. What should they say later so that it wouldn't hurt the big boss's heart? Hearing this, a trace of ridicule flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes as she stared at Bei Yunj's departing figure. "An original score? Bei Yunj, since you like to compete with me so much, let's see how long you can be arrogant for." In the rehearsal hall. After Bei Yunj handed the score to Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao, their eyes flickered and they refused to open her score. She was silent for a moment and looked at the two with a faint smile. "What do you mean? Do you think my music score is bad?" Lu Yuanxi: No, Master Pei, you're omnipotent. Why would I think that? However, Master Pei, the gala this time is more important. Why don't we change the score?" Before he could finish his sentence, Song Yao interrupted her. "Let's try Yunj's score first." Lu Yuanxi turned back to look at Song Yao. "Sister Yao, aren't you indulging Bei Yunj too much?" Who knew what Bei Yunj could write? She still wanted to give it a try. "Then I'll play a part for you guys to listen to." With that said, Bei Yunj sat in front of the piano, her slender and good-looking fingers dancing on the black and white keys. When the first part of the piano sounded, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao were stunned and instinctively looked at the person playing the piano. What was going on? Did Bei Yunj really know how to arrange music? Although they did not know how to arrange music, listening to this piece of music, they knew that Bei Yunj's style was mature and even higher than those people from the International Musicians Association. Until the entire song ended. Bei Yunj then said slowly, "I don't have much time recently, so I changed the old song I wrote previously and added some new things. If you don't like it, I'll release another version in the next 2 days." Chapter 1279. Wait a minute, did you write this yourself? After Lu Yuanxi regained his senses, he asked in disbelief. Bei Yunj turned around and smiled. "Brother Lu, do you not understand human language after studying in university?" Lu Yuanxi was speechless. It was not easy for him to maintain this friendship. Suddenly, Song Yao said, "I think it's very nice. Why don't we try it?" Okay. Bei Yunj nodded and sat in front of the piano to teach Song Yao slowly. Not long after, Lu Yuanxi looked at Bei Yunj and Song Yao playing together and felt that he was the extra one on the field. Lu Yuanxi turned around expressionlessly and started to play the violin in front of the score. After the three of them finished their training and left, someone sneaked into the training hall and looked around before taking the tape recorder that had been prepared in the corner. "How is it? Did you get Bei Yunj's score?" Qin Youjiao could not hide the darkness in her eyes. She still wanted to ensure that nothing would go wrong with this performance. Yu Ling handed the USB flash drive to Qin Youjiao and played with her hair as she raised her chin. "I just got someone to record it. Listen to it." A trace of disdain flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes. Of course, she knew that Yu Ling ordered her pursuers around all day long. She was clearly dating Fu Yanbai, but she declared to the public that she was not in a relationship. Qin Youjiao hid her surprise and took it to listen to the source of the music. However, a few minutes later, Qin Youjiao's face darkened. Qin Youjiao knew that Bei Yunj probably knew how to arrange music, but she did not take it seriously. After all, she had stayed abroad for more than a year in the International Musicians Association and studied day and night every day. Her ability should be better than Bei Yunj's. Therefore, she never thought that Bei Yunj's work could be compared to hers. However, at this moment, the truth was thrown ruthlessly in her face. making her heart tremble and filled with pain and hatred. How was this possible? What right did she have? Bae-yeonj used to be so uneasy that her hands would tremble when playing the piano, but now she was playing the score she wrote and crushing her effortlessly? Is this the score written by Bae-yeonj? Chin Yo-jiao asked through gritted teeth. Yuling didn't look too good either. However, before Yuling could speak, someone at the door suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Yo-jiao, who wrote this score? The person who spoke was a famous professor in Chin Yo-jiao's department. He was also one of the few members of the musical alliance in the country. Chin Yo-jiao's expression turned ugly. She did not expect her professor to overhear her. She pursed her lips and said, "A friend of mine." Your friend? Was he old? The level of this score doesn't sound like something your peers could have written. The professor's words were like a slap that landed ruthlessly on Chin Yo-jiao's face. Yuling furrowed her eyebrows. She did not expect Chin Yo-jiao to not even have this ability. She couldn't even compete with Bae-yeonj. But why do I feel that this song sounds familiar? Yuling's casual words made Chin Yo-jiao extremely agitated. She turned around abruptly. What did you say? Have you heard of it somewhere before? Yuling was shocked before she said slowly, I think it's a female singer who has been quite popular recently. The popularity of her new song is almost comparable to you Mandarin's. Your friend copied such a good song? The professor frowned as a layer of coldness and disgust appeared in his eyes. However, Chin Yo-jiao could not suppress her excitement and started to investigate the singer Yuling was talking about. P.S. Continue reading in the morning. Chapter 1280. The singer Yuling was talking about was called Fang Shiyun. She was an artiste who had suddenly become popular in the past 6 months. Coincidentally, Chin Yo-jiao also knew Fang Shiyun. This was her junior from the music class. Chin Yo-jiao's expression changed slightly, feeling very surprised and upset. She remembered that Fang Shiyun did not have any musical talent at all and was the least outstanding one in the music class. She was just a little pretty. But it had only been a few years since they last met. How could Fang Shiyun write such a song? How is it? Isn't it very similar? Yuling asked Chin Yo-jiao. However, the professor frowned. Yo-jiao, no matter who your friend is, you should remind her early not to do such a thing. At such a young age, do you really have to ruin your reputation and ruin your reputation? Chin Yo-jiao immediately laughed. Professor, don't worry. I'll tell her. The professor nodded. Ever since he found out that such a perfect score was actually plagiarized, his expression had also darkened. Young people nowadays were really too ambitious. However, after Chin Yo-jiao left, Yuling could not suppress her excitement as she said, since Bae-yeonj plagiarized, why don't we expose her now? She couldn't wait to see Bae-yeonj and Song Yao being hated by everyone like rats on the street. Yuling's eyes were filled with unwillingness and resentment. Ever since she returned, Fu Yanbai had not treated her as well as before. A few days ago, she had even found a 1-inch photo of Song Yao in Fu Yanbai's book. This made Yuling feel a sense of danger. Fu Yanbai already felt guilty towards Song Yao and now he was clearly even more interested in Song Yao. She would never allow Song Yao, who had once been trampled under her feet, to turn around and win against her. Hearing this, a cold smile appeared in Chin Yo-jiao's eyes as she glanced at Yuling. She really did not know how Fu Yanbai took a fancy to such an idiot. There's no hurry. Chin Yo-jiao put away the USB drive and said calmly. What do you mean there's no hurry? Don't you want Bae-yeonj's reputation to be ruined? Yuling frowned. Chin Yo-jiao's tone was mocking. How is exposing her now considered ruining her reputation? She laughed, the coldness and malice in her eyes intertwined. Just watch. On the day of the banquet, let's see how Bae-yeonj will be humiliated. This time she would definitely avenge herself. For several days in a row, Bae-yeonj stayed in the laboratory and occasionally went to watch Song Yao and Lu Yuanxi rehearse. I'll wait for you at the door. When Bae-yeonj saw Huashidu's message, it was already half an hour later. Yeonj, look at this data. Before Si Qingyan could finish speaking, Bae-yeonj suddenly took off her white coat. She only said a few words before she ran away in a hurry. Something came up, Brother Yen. You play by yourself. Si Qingyan, who was watching Bae-yeonj leave, was speechless. What do you mean by play? Wasn't he looking down on his project too much? However, Si Qingyan was also very curious. Who had Bae-yeonj received a message from? She actually left so quickly. When she ran downstairs, Bae-yeonj's breathing was slightly chaotic and a small tuft of her short hair stood up messily. Before she could take off her mask and look around for the man's back, someone suddenly grabbed her hand around the corner. Before Bei Yunj could react, she was grabbed by the waist and pressed behind the corner. The moment she looked up, her eyes met with the man's smiling upturned eyes. They were very charming. "Why are you here?" Before Bei Yunj could go out, she was pulled back. End of this chapter. Chapter 1281. Bei Yunj bumped straight back into the man's chest. "What are you doing?" Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched as she looked up at the man with a sloppy expression. "Didn't Yun not allow me to appear in school?" The man tidied Bei Yunj's messy hair with one hand. Suddenly, he leaned over casually and smiled frivolously. Bei Yunj suddenly felt that Huashidu was holding her hand. The atmosphere and the other party's body temperature made her feel a secret intimacy and excitement. It made her inexplicably happy and her heart beat faster. She crossed her fingers ambiguously. "Then do you want to have a secret affair with brother?" Bei Yunj met the man's gaze, but it was as if she was scalded by his gaze. She quickly looked away. Her heart was beating like a drum. Huashidu also felt that he had teased her too much just now. As a result, the child with red ears beside him walked without looking up. He did not even look at him. But suddenly, there were more discussions around them. "Is this a senior from our school? He's too handsome. Isn't this Bei Yunj from the physics department? Could it be that this little brother is the senior from Beichuan who was photographed with Bei Yunj last time?" "Impossible. Beichuan isn't that handsome, okay? Then, is this the boyfriend of the top scorer's father?" The people around them were discussing animatedly. There were also little girls whose eyes were sparkling, looking eager to try. Bei Yunj pursed her red lips unconsciously. Before the others could react, she grabbed the man's hand and walked forward quickly. Huashidu raised his eyebrows and curled his thin red lips. "Yun, be gentler to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the girls around them could not hold back their excitement and almost screamed softly. This was too suave. Bei Yunj, was this D*Emin man selling his smile? In public he was seducing people just because he was good-looking? Huashidu still did not know that his child had been unhappy for a long time because of his pair of naturally affectionate peach blossom eyes. At this moment, the others also realized that the big boss of the physics department was declaring his sovereignty, and the people around him were no longer infatuated. However, she inexplicably felt that the way this big boss expressionlessly held the man's hand was a natural contrast adorable. Even the boss has a proud moment? However, not long after, when Bei Yunj was holding the man's hand, she suddenly saw a familiar middle-aged man in front of them. But she seemed to have never seen it before. 2 minutes later, Bei Yunj suddenly realized from the original protagonist's memory that this was Qing Zihuai's father. Bei Yunj didn't know if it was because the original owner's consciousness was still there, but she subconsciously froze. Although Qing Zihuai's mother hated Bei Yunj and schemed against Bei Yunj with Qin Youjiao, Qing Zihuai's father treated Bei Yunj as his biological daughter. Even the marriage between the original owner and Qing Zihuai was facilitated by Father Cheng. Therefore, in front of Father Qing, Bei Yunj actually felt guilty for eloping with someone. Beside her, Huashidu also felt that something was wrong with Bei Yunj. "What's wrong?" Bei Yunj said, "The person in front is Qing Zihuai's father." Hearing this, the corners of Huashidu's lazy upturned eyes raised slightly as his gaze landed on Bei Yunj calmly. He remembered that this child had been engaged to the Cheng family before. Seeing Bei Yunj's guilty expression, the man licked his thin red lips and snorted silently. Then, Bei Yunj saw Father Cheng walking over and turned to leave instinctively. Chapter 1282. However, just as Bei Yunj pulled Huashidu back, the man pulled Bei Yunj back without moving. Hence, Bei Yunj bumped into the man out of habit. In front of Mr. Cheng, she held Huashidu's hand and pressed her face against his chest. Just like that, the atmosphere turned cold and they looked at each other subtly. However, Huashidu even reached out unscrupulously and touched Bei Yunj's head. His lazy voice was lowered and there was a hint of mockery in it. "Don't you like the ice cream at the school gate? Brother wants to have a bite, but Yun won't let him." Bei Yunj, did Huashidu, this D*Emin man, take the wrong medicine? Mr. Cheng stiffened for a moment before he slowly smiled and said, A long time no see. Some time ago, I heard that girl was the top scorer in the country. I haven't had the chance to congratulate you properly." "Uncle Cheng." Bei Yunj nodded and her lips curled up. She avoided Mr. Cheng not because of anything else, but because she did not know how to face this elder who doted on her. After all, she was not the original owner of the body. "This is..." Mr. Cheng looked at Huashidu and found him familiar. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and his eyes widened unconsciously. You're President Hua? President Cheng, you're too polite. Huashidu was still holding Bei Yunji's hand and pulling her closer to him. Mr. Cheng naturally felt that Huashidu and Bei Yunji's relationship was not ordinary. Mr. Cheng was silent for a moment before he sighed and looked at Bei Yunji with a smile. That's good too. About the engagement. I've let you down. Zihuai didn't get to be with you because he didn't have the fortune. Hearing this, the man's gaze swept over Father Cheng indifferently. Bei Yunji smiled. Uncle Cheng, you don't have to say that. Thank you for taking care of me in the past. At that time, I was still too insensible and didn't know what love was. I've troubled the two families to worry about me. As soon as she finished speaking, Huashidu's eyes, which had just darkened, instantly disappeared. The corners of his lips unconsciously curled up. When no one was looking, he rubbed his index finger against Bei Yunji's palm ambiguously. Bei Yunji's body froze instantly from the man's seduction. Her heart felt numb, but the tip of her ears slowly turned pink. Seeing this, the man chuckled subconsciously, attracting Mr. Cheng's father's attention. Mr. Cheng subconsciously lowered his head and saw the two of them holding hands. He immediately understood what was going on. Then I'll go look for Zihuai. Geez. Bei Yunji's father, Bei Yunji's. Bei Yunji nodded. All right. Of course, she knew that Mr. Cheng must have seen through it. After father's left, Huai's Cheng's. Suddenly, Bei Yunji stood on tiptoes and asked with a smirk by his ear, "Don't you think what older brother did today is embarrassing?" When this D*MN man was flirtatious, he had no bottom line at all. However, the man laughed slowly and held the young lady's waist. He continued to tease her in a low voice. It's my first time doing such a thing, so it's quite embarrassing. However, I'll get used to it a few more times. Bei Yunji? Was she encouraging him? A few more times to get used to it? Until the next moment, Bei Yunji seemed to have heard the man say slowly. After all, how can I not put down my pride to woo my little girl? Bei Yunji ate her strawberry ice cream. After a while, she could not help but turn to look at the man in the driver's seat. Brother, I think I heard you say something just now. Chapter 1283. What did I say? The man looked straight ahead and asked in a casual tone. Bei Yunji, did she hear wrongly? Bei Yunji did not say anything and continued to eat her strawberry ice cream. The man glanced at the person beside him and even the corners of his seductive peach blossom eyes curled up slightly. After leaving school, Huashidu chose a restaurant to eat at according to Bei Yunji's preferences. However, not long after, Huashidu received a call. After hanging up, Bei Yunji glanced at him knowingly. Brother, do you have something on later? The man replied calmly. However, before Bei Yunji could react, she heard the man ask, Do you want to go together? Bei Yunji was slightly stunned. After all, Huashidu never liked to bring her to those drinking parties. She asked, Didn't you never bring me there in the past? In the past, our union was still young. The man handed the fruit juice at the side to Bei Yunji and smiled slowly. But now, our union has also grown up. Huashidu looked straight at her. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. In the past, he had taken into account that she was still young and in high school and was afraid that she would not like such places. But now, he also wanted Bei Yunji to be closer to him. Let's go take a look. Bei Yunji seemed to be scalded by the man's deep gaze and turned her head subconsciously. Huashidu slowly suppressed the smile on his lips. Well, first. When we get there later, if you don't like it, I'll take you away first. At the golf course. Huashidu had just brought Bei Yunji in when he saw 6 to 7 men not far away. There were also a few beautiful girls around them who were smiling and chatting. However, when they saw Huashidu, a few men immediately surrounded him. President Hua, I didn't expect you to come this time. Someone immediately flattered him, but when his gaze shifted to the unbelievably beautiful girl beside him, he could not help but be secretly amazed. No wonder he was the head of the whole corporation. Even the woman he brought with him could make the stars and models around him look ordinary in comparison. Compared to Bei Yunji, those glamorous female artistes on television indeed had stiff faces and were as calm as water. It happens to be nearby. The moment Huashidu spoke, he attracted the attention of those women. There were also people who were secretly sizing up Bei Yunji. But the next moment? Very hot. Huashidu saw that Bei Yunji was frowning because of the glaring light and used his hand to shield Bei Yunji from the sun. Bei Yunji narrowed her beautiful eyes and simply responded, as if she was used to the man's thoughtful service. This scene caused everyone to fall silent. Since when did the master of the whole corporation show such tenderness towards women? Wasn't Master Du too fond of this girl? He actually spoiled her to this extent? However, looking at Bae-yun's face, they probably couldn't bear to see such a beauty exposed to the sun. "Is this lady your friend, Master Du?" someone asked with a smile. Huoshidu's gaze landed on Bae-yun casually, but he laughed softly. "She's the ancestor of the family." Hearing Huoshidu's words, everyone looked at Bae-yun with even more shock and complicated expressions. Especially the few women beside her. They had relied on the men beside them to obtain their current status. Therefore, when they first saw Bae-yun, they naturally thought that they were people of the same status. But now, they realized that their status was worlds apart. Chapter 1284. Master Du hasn't been here for a long time. Why don't we have a meal together this time? Someone asked with a smile. "I just picked her up from school. I was afraid that she would be hungry, so I already ate." The man's tone was light and natural. His words attracted the envy of many people. Master Du was different from others. Be it in terms of looks or ability, he was a perfect match that women would go crazy for. Many women wanted to use this man to climb up the social ladder, but who would dare to pluck this unattainable flower? The other women looked at Bae-yun with indignation in their eyes. How could a little girl who was still in university have the right to pull a man like President Hu down from his pedestal? Not long after. Suddenly, a delicate and pretty girl with youthful eyes was pushed out. Under everyone's gaze, the girl believed the other women's words and nervously reached out her hand to Bae-yun. "Hello, I'm Chen Xiao." As soon as she finished speaking, the young man who brought Chen Xiao over had a dark expression. The other women couldn't help but laugh sarcastically behind them. What a fool. She actually believed them. Shaking hands with the girl beside Master Du was the rule. Anyone with a little experience in society should know that in such a drinking party, there was a huge difference in status between a female companion and a girlfriend. Chen Xiao shaking hands with the girl was actually a form of humiliation to the girl. The other women gloated and wanted to see how ugly Bae-yun's expression would become. But in the next moment, Bae-yun glanced at her indifferently. Not long after, she actually reached out and gently shook Chen Xiao's hand. "Hello, Bae-yun." This instantly made the sarcastic expressions on the other women's faces freeze. Chen Xiao instinctively looked up and accidentally met Bae-yun's eyes. For a long time she forgot to let go. Until the man in a white suit beside her reminded her with a sullen expression. "Chen Xiao." Chen Xiao snapped back to her senses and immediately let go of her hand. However, her face was slightly red. "Go and change your clothes first. I have something to discuss." Huoshidu didn't look at the others. He just lowered his head and whispered into Bae-yun's ear, "Can you play here by yourself later?" "Okay, go ahead." Bae-yun nodded. Huoshidu smirked and stood behind Bae-yun again. He bit his hair tie and casually pulled up her long hair with his well-defined hand. Not long after, he tied Bae-yun's hair into a simple ponytail. "I'll pick you up when you're done. Call me if you need anything." "Yes." The surrounding people did not dare to say anything when they saw Huoshidu skillfully braiding the little girl's hair. Is this person still Master Du? Especially for the women who were watching this scene, it was impossible for them not to be envious. However, after Huoshidu left, no one was willing to chat with Bae-yun. Some were timid and some were ostracized. "You play really well." Only Chen Xiao supported Bae-yun naturally. "You'll get used to it after a while." Bae-yun glanced at Chen Xiao. Seeing that Chen Xiao was hesitant, she said, "Do you want me to teach you?" "Really?" Chen Xiao's eyes lit up. Beside the parasol. "That female university student is really playing with Chen Xiao." Someone sneered. "Chen Xiao is also a female university student, right? No wonder they can play together." "Shiyun, don't you think so?" Another woman said to Fang Shiyun in a flattering tone. Fang Shiyun was a singer who had just become popular this year. Now she was considered a B-list singer. In addition, she had resources behind her. It was said that she had even snatched a few resources from Yu Manran. Chapter 1285. That was why these women tried their best to please Fang Shiyun. However, there was actually another important reason. Fang Shiyun was a typical example of a mistress who was just one step away from marrying into a wealthy family. Back then, when Fang Shiyun was still a C-list celebrity, she was unknown for 7 to 8 years. However, after currying favor with the CEO of Xingsha Media, she started to receive resources. Recently, she had become popular with her self-composed song, Kissing You on a Rainy Day, and was titled as the talented girl of the music industry. It was also because of Fang Shiyun's popularity that the CEO and his wife of Xingsha Media were divorcing and their relationship was exposed. On the other hand, Fang Shiyun was an intruder. Because she shed 2 drops of tears in front of the camera, her fanatical fans started to curse the original wife crazily. As for the original wife, she had once accompanied her husband to start from scratch, but in the end, her reputation was ruined by the divorce. The woman holding the bottle of mineral water looked much more exquisite than the others. After glancing at Bei Yunj, she said casually, "Don't be mistaken. The Huo family is not like other prestigious families. In Yunqing, other than the Huo family, who else can do whatever they want?" She was giving the others a warning. Bei Yunj, a young female university student, wanted to marry into the Huo family. It was simply wishful thinking. The others immediately sobered up. Yeah, if she's really the future young madam of the Huo family, Master Du might not bring her here, right? The eyes of the others lit up instantly. However, when they thought of Bei Yunj's excessively beautiful face, they instantly dispelled their evil thoughts that were full of fighting spirit. Even if Master Du wanted to choose a woman, it would not be their turn. In the changing room. "Yunj, which school are you from?" Qian Xiao felt that Bei Yunj's temper was not as bad as she imagined, so she started to become bold. "Yun University." "Yun University?" Qian Xiao was so shocked that her voice was raised. It was her first time seeing a living top student. "Then your college entrance examination results were very good, right?" Bei Yunj thought for a moment and said slowly, "It's all right." Hearing this, Qian Xiao thought that Bei Yunj's results were the highest in Yun University. "That's good too. With my brain, I might not even be able to get into Yun University in 3 years." After Qian Xiao comforted her, Bei Yunj stopped washing her hands. Then, she turned around and saw Bei Yunj looking at her with a complicated expression. "Qian Xiao, this pitiful and complicated gaze, why did it make her feel like she was retarded?" Not long after, Qian Xiao was called away by a phone call. Bei Yunj took a shower and changed her clothes. When she went out, she saw Fang Shiyun wearing a low-cut black dress. There was a faint smell of cigarettes around her. "How long has Miss Pei been with Master Du?" Fang Shiyun asked. Bei Yunj glanced at her indifferently and casually brushed her black hair in front of the mirror. "Miss, you smoke too?" Bei Yunj looked at her lazily. Fang Shiyun's smile stiffened. Her public image was that of a pure flower. If the matter of her smoking was magnified, it would definitely have a negative impact. "Miss Pei, aren't you being too nosy?" Fang Shiyun coldly asked. "You also know that there's a lot to do." Bei Yunj laughed softly. Only then did Fang Shiyun realize that Bei Yunj had asked this question on purpose. Her face instantly turned pale. She glared at Bei Yunj and pursed her lips. "Miss Pei, do you mind people knowing about your relationship with Master Du?" Bei Yunj suddenly turned around and looked at her for a while. She licked her red lips, tilted her head and raised her eyebrows. Her words were full of lust. "Miss Pei, are you interested in doing something you like?" Chapter 1286. Hearing this, Fang Shiyun's face turned red and green. She did not expect Bei Yunj to dare to say anything to outsiders. "You." Bei Yunj happened to glance at the new score written by Shiyun on the table and raised her eyebrows with interest. She remembered that Qian Xiao had told her just now that there was a very famous singer among those women. However, a very famous singer's creative standards were quite surprising. At least in Bei Yunj's opinion, not to mention the talented Qin Yu, even Yu Manren's creative standards could beat this person a few times. However, Fang Shiyun saw that Bei Yunj had just looked at her score. She laughed coldly and her tone was a little impatient and arrogant. "Miss Pei, you can't understand this thing either. It's better not to sweep it around." During this period of time, her management company had forced her to release new songs, so she had no choice but to bring a score with her. However, the things she wrote could not compare to the previous song, "Kissing You on a Rainy Day." Fang Shiyun pursed her lips, her eyes dark and indignant. "I heard that Miss Fang is quite famous. I'm also quite curious how Miss Fang did it." Bei Yunj looked at her with a faint smile and asked, but it instantly hit Fang Shiyun's sore spot. "What do you know? How dare you spout nonsense here?" Fang Shiyun's voice suddenly became sharp. However, Fang Shiyun knew better than anyone that her famous work, "Kissing You on a Rainy Day," was pieced together by borrowing the melody of Yun's Spring Night Banquet. Fang Shiyun also relied on the fact that Yun had few fans in the country and that the boundary against plagiarism in the country was not clear, so she dared to do this openly. However, she had also been scolded by Yu Manren because of this matter. Fortunately, the company stepped in and resolved this matter. After all, Fang Shiyun was already famous. How could the company bear to give up this money tree? However, this was still Fang Shiyun's sore spot. She could not bear to hear others doubt her like this. Really? Miss Fang's arrangements have always liked to use elements to pile up? Bei Yunj sneered and asked leisurely, but Fang Shiyun froze. Her face turned slightly pale and she felt guilty. This was because her arrangements had always been mediocre. There was nothing special about them. They were like the products of an assembly line. Therefore this time, in order to imitate Yun's style, she accumulated a lot of elements. However, the final effect was to draw a tiger but end up like a dog. Only a bunch of messy and noisy noises came out. Fang Shiyun was afraid that Bei Yunj would discover something wrong and ruin her career. Fortunately, Bei Yunj didn't care about her at all. She just sneered and turned to leave. Fang Shiyun looked at Bei Yunj's back as he left and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But the sudden ringing of the phone startled Fang Shiyun. Damn it. Fang Shiyun was blaming herself for calling at this time, but when she saw that the caller ID was Qin Yojiao, she was surprised. This young lady actually took the initiative to look for her? Evening. Bei Yunj had just gone to look for Hua Shidu when she saw Chen Xiao and the rest frowning at the entrance of the restaurant. What are you doing here? Bei Yunj glanced at them. Chen Xiao bit her lip and said with a dark expression, I chose a restaurant for my husband. I wanted to invite everyone to a meal, but I didn't expect. During this period of time, there are other requirements for the opening of this restaurant. What requirements? Bei Yunj asked. Chen Xiao said, the ranking of the college entrance examination scores. Bei Yunj was speechless. What kind of messy restaurant was this? Chapter 1287. Before Bei Yunj could come back to her senses, she heard a rich young master say angrily, this is King blatant discrimination against bad students. If your restaurant is so powerful, why don't you bring the entire family of the college entrance examination top scorer here? Bei Yunj turned around and looked around. She raised her eyebrows slowly. Where's my master Du? Chen Xiao said, he seems to have something on. He's answering a call outside. Then let's wait for him. Bei Yunj was interested. She also wanted to know how many points Hua Shidu had scored in the college entrance examination. The people beside her could roughly guess Bei Yunj's intentions. Someone reminded Bei Yunj softly, Master Du skipped grades and went to high school back then. He was eligible for admission in his second year. But after that, he went to Neely University and did not take the college entrance examination. Bei Yunj was speechless. Was this person cheating all the way? Bei Yunj glanced at the restaurant. It looked quite high-end and elegant. She did not know why they held such a strange event. How many points do we need to go in and eat? Bei Yunj turned around and asked. Chen Xiao smiled like a bad student and said with difficulty, you can't order food below 400 points. You can eat on the first floor if you score more than 450 points. You can book a private room if you score 550 points. You can eat on the second floor if you score 600 points. You can eat on the third floor if you score 650 points. You can eat on the fourth floor if you score 670 points. The top 10 of the national ranking can enter the top floor. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. You can't eat? Chen Xiao's expression was complicated. I'm 549 points. Bei Yunj was speechless. She happened to be stuck and could not book a private room. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. Just as she was about to speak, Fang Shiyun suddenly twisted her waist and stroked her hair flirtatiously as she walked over. Let me do it. After Fang Shiyun finished speaking, she walked confidently to the front hall and logged into the website to check her previous college entrance examination results. The staff's eyes were filled with shock. Miss Fang, you scored 657 points in the college entrance examination back then? I didn't expect you to be a top student. I performed abnormally back then. My original goal was the music department of Yun University in Beichuan. Fang Shiyun smiled and happened to see Hua Shidu walking in. A glint flashed across her eyes and her tone suddenly became gentle. I can only bring everyone to the third floor. I hope everyone doesn't mind. 657 points, I wouldn't even dare to get this much in my dreams? The girl pretended to be surprised, but in her heart, she wanted to embarrass the two female university students present. Chen Xiao subconsciously turned to look at Bei Yunj. As expected, she saw that Bei Yunj was still looking at the girl who had just spoken with a complicated expression. Chen Xiao felt like he was looking at an idiot. Then President Hua, do you mind if we go to the third floor for dinner? The person next to him asked tentatively. Hua Shidu glanced at his watch and said lightly, it's too late. I have to send my girl back to school. After that, suddenly a fearless woman said, may I know which school Miss Pei is from? The person beside Master Du should also be a top student, right? Hearing this, the faces of the men who had gathered here to curry favor with Master Du instantly turned ugly. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Did these women have any brains at all? Why did they have to provoke Master Du at this time? That's right, Yun University isn't far from here. It looks like Miss Pei is from Yun University, right? Someone continued to add fuel to the fire. This made Chen Xiao frown, and he was about to explain to everyone. Who knew? Suddenly, a boy from Yun University's physics department came down with a few takeout boxes. When he saw Bei Yunj, his face was filled with joy and surprise. However, when he saw the dozen people beside Bei Yunj, he couldn't help but say, "Yo, Master Pei, did you move your entire family here to dine and dash? That's too ruthless. P.S. I'm cheering everyone on behalf of Master Pei. Don't be nervous about the college entrance examination tomorrow. Do well, children. Put down your phone and sleep early." Chapter 1288. Bei Yunj was speechless. This restaurant is really too much. Why isn't it closer to Yun University? Otherwise, I think the whole school would be here. The boy muttered to himself. When the others heard this, their expressions changed and they instinctively looked at Bei Yunj. This girl was really from Yun University? Master Pei, their king crab is Ju's on. Hurry up and go. I'll go back to school first. With that, the boy ran away with the takeout box, leaving the group of people behind in silence. Fang Shiyun and the others who had been slapped in the face had a colorful expression. Bei Yunj glanced at the counter and suddenly laughed lazily. All right, this meal is on me. With that said, Bei Yunj tugged at Huashidu's sleeve and looked up at him. Then she walked to the front desk and pulled down her mask. She lowered her voice and said, "Hello, I'd like to book a private room." The lady at the front desk was stunned by Bei Yunj's face, but the next moment she quickly smiled and said, "Miss, you can log into the website to check your college entrance examination results. Recently, if you want to book a private room in our restaurant, you need to have a college entrance examination score of 550 and above." Bei Yunj's slender and beautiful fingers tapped on the keyboard a few times and entered her personal information. Soon, the college entrance examination score page popped up. The lady at the front desk lowered her head and looked carefully. Her entire body froze. She even suspected that there was something wrong with the machine. The lady at the front desk immediately regained her professional smile and bowed slightly to Bei Yunj. "I'll book a VIP private room for you immediately. All drinks and food are free. I wish you a happy meal." Chen Xiao, who was not far away, was in disbelief when she heard this. VIP private room? All drinks and food are free? What kind of treatment is this? Even Fang Shiyun's expression froze. How many college entrance examination scores were there to receive such treatment? Chen Xiao was curious. Just as she was about to walk over to take a look, a line of words suddenly appeared on the big screen. Then a voice sounded, "Welcome, XX24 College Entrance Examination Top Scholar Pei XX to our restaurant. It's our honor. We wish you a happy meal." There was even a line of clear words below. National ranking, first place. Total score, 749. Instantly, the entire restaurant was in an uproar. F*CK, is this the top scorer of this year's college entrance examination? The legendary prodigy himself? Isn't this year's top scholar film Emperor Qin and Almighty Qin's sister? This year's top scorer is the most King Ferocious. He actually got 749 on such a difficult test. Don't talk about it. The principal of Hengda High School said that the father of the top scorer of the college entrance examination was still having a high fever and wasn't in a good state. Is he still human? His condition wasn't good, so he only got 749 points? The waiter almost blurted out top scorer's father, but he quickly corrected himself. "Miss Pei, please follow me to the top floor." "Thank you." Bei Yunj nodded. Huashidu looked at the little girl beside him and couldn't help but smile. Bei Yunj asked subconsciously when she saw the man smiling. "What are you laughing at?" The man scratched her chin lightly. The corners of his peach blossom eyes were seductive. His low and sexy laughter rippled. "Our Yun did very well. She's much better than brother." Bei Yunj's eyes flickered slightly. All along, Bei Yunj didn't think that she was very good. In her previous life, Meng Liang had never been stingy with praising her. It was as if geniuses should be better than others. Later on, Bei Yunj gradually thought so too. Until today. Someone would bend down and tell her gently that she had done a good job. Chapter 1289. After Bei Yunj regained her senses, she instinctively lowered the brim of her cap. Her tone was not cold. Coaxing a child? The man went along with her words and held back his laughter. Do you dislike it that much? Is your brother's coaxing skills that bad? Bei Yunj was about to say something when she paused. The next moment, the man moved closer to her ear. His usual lazy tone was a little more intimate. But your brother only has one child at home. Yun, can you be more tolerant? You'll be able to coax my child in the future. Bei Yunja's long eyelashes fluttered. She was about to say something when she realized that everyone was staring at them. The man's expression was normal. He was unscrupulous in front of everyone. Bei Yunj was even more expressionless. This man was shameless. At this moment, the people who followed Bei Yunj upstairs had mixed feelings. Who would have thought that the beautiful girl next to Master Du was actually this year's college entrance examination top scorer? This was simply too surreal. The college entrance examination top scorer actually looked like this. Especially Fang Shiyun. Her face was stiff and her expression was extremely ugly. Especially when she thought about how she had confidently told everyone that she had failed the college entrance examination back then and had almost been admitted to Yun University. In the end, when they looked back, Bei Yunj was this year's college entrance examination top scorer. It was probably the first time that everyone present had seen the college entrance examination top scorer. Someone laughed dryly. I didn't expect Miss Pei to be so young and promising. You must be very busy with your studies, right? It's all right. It's quite simple. Bei Yunj's casual words made everyone present not dare to continue. Was this the confidence of a big boss? How could Yun University have such a simple major? Qian Xiao tugged at Bei Yunj's sleeve. Bei Yunj, what's your major? Physics. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, everyone looked at Bei Yunj as if they were looking at a living god. Master Du was indeed worthy. He could unearth a treasure with just one dig. However, Fang Shiyun and the others who saw the people on the scene constantly flattering Bei Yunj were already laughing so hard that they could barely raise their heads. It wasn't until the end of the meal that they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to competing with other women, they were more afraid of this kind of studious big boss. Soon. Until the end of the dinner. Looking at the backs of Bei Yunj and Wang Yao as they left, Fang Shiyun's group of sisters changed their tune. I really didn't expect that the person Master Du brought along was actually the top scorer of the college entrance examination. That's too amazing. A straight A student is a straight A student. Anyway, I can't afford to offend him. Suddenly someone changed the topic. Oh right, Shiyun, I still have something to do. I won't be going to your party this time. And me? These women were clearly afraid that Bei Yunj would deal with Fang Shiyun behind her back, so they wanted to see the situation first. And Fang Shiyun looked at these women who used to hold her every day, and actually started to treat her with this attitude. Her face instantly sank. In the car. However, Fang Shiyun's eyes flashed and she immediately called Qin Youjiao. Youjiao, who did you say plagiarized my song in your school? Qin Youjiao stood up from the piano. It's Bei Yunj from the physics department. What's wrong? I saw her today, but are you sure it's okay for me to do this? Fang Shiyun was unwilling to accept it, but she wanted to see with her own eyes how Bei Yunj fell from the clouds. However, she still had her rationality. The man beside Bei Yunj was Huashidu. P.S. The previous chapter has been modified. You can read it again. Chapter 1290. A glint flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes before she laughed. What's wrong with that? Shiyun, as the victim, you're not the one who should be afraid. Bei Yunj has someone protecting her, but shouldn't they seal your mouth first to please you when such a thing happens? Fang Shiyun's eyes flashed and she was unconsciously tempted. She hated Bei Yunj the first time she saw her. It was only because she had succumbed to reality and accompanied an old man who was more than 20 years older than her for the sake of her career. On the other hand, Bei Yunj stood beside a man like Huashidu easily and was superior to him. How could she feel at ease? But if she could come into contact with an outstanding man like Huashidu? Okay, I promise you. Fang Shiyun gritted her teeth. After returning to school, Bei Yunj had only been idle for 2 days before she heard that the current principal and Bai Mingzhang had an argument. It was very ugly. However, when Bei Yunj knocked on the door of the principal's office, she realized that the current principal was just being scolded. Bai Mingzhang sat on the leather sofa with a dark expression. Until Bei Yunj glanced at the two of them and suddenly said, Principal Xiang. Hearing Bei Yunj's voice, Bai Mingzhang turned around and his anger subsided instantly. Yunj, why are you here? How does it feel to go to university? Are you happy? Are you busy with your studies? Bai Mingzhang seemed to have suddenly changed into a different person. His tone was loving and gentle. The corners of Principal Xiang's mouth twitched. He was speechless at the change in his teacher's expression. It's pretty good, Bai Yunj replied. After a moment of silence, she asked, Are you guys talking about something? Hearing that Bai Yunj had finally asked, Principal Xiang heaved a sigh of relief unconsciously and immediately said, It's like this, Yunj. There's a sudden infectious disease in the north of Continent K. Our seminar has unanimously decided that Director Lin is the most suitable person to go to our nation and cooperate with experts from all over the world. However, Director Lin might have some concerns. However, actually, we can resolve all of Director Lin's worries. Besides, Director Lin's return to scientific research will be helpful to your future. Principal Xiang felt that Bai Yunj would definitely be easier to persuade than Bai Mingzhang. But who knew, she said slowly, I don't need anyone to pave the way for my future. Principal Xiang, although these words were arrogant, when she thought about how Bai Yunj had completely defeated the graduate students of Neely University last month, she felt that it was very real. You're recommending him? Others might not know, but you old fogies don't know that Lan Jun almost lost her life because of the virus experiment. Moreover, because of that experiment, Director Lin also left behind a lot of roots of illness. Principal Xiang was embarrassed by the scolding. He cursed in his heart that the seminar didn't dare to provoke Mr. Bai and made him do this annoying thing. When Bai Yunj heard Bai Mingzhang's words, her gaze instantly turned cold, but she smiled casually. Principal Xiang, my grandma is soft-tempered and kind-hearted, but I hope that you will respect her opinion. I don't want anyone to use moral sense to bind an old woman in her 60s or 70s, and not let her go even after retirement. As you know, our Lin Academy has also contributed a lot. Principal Xiang was instantly rendered speechless. He also didn't expect Bai Yunj's attitude to be even more difficult to deal with than Bai Mingzhang's. I only have this one Empress Dowager in my family. If she's really coaxed by you and an accident happens, I don't know what I'll do. Bai Yunj smiled slowly, but there was no warmth in her eyes. However, even Bai Mingzhang was flustered by Bai Yunj's attitude. End of chapter. Chapter 1291. Bai Yunj's tone was cold. You're on your own. Principal Xiang still didn't know Bai Yunj's identity, but Bai Mingzhang knew it very well. If this ancestor wanted to cause trouble, it would be a large-scale disaster that made one's scalp turn numb. However, Principal Xiang felt very guilty after hearing Bai Yunj's words. He was furious and unconsciously started to add fuel to the fire. I know you're definitely unhappy, Yunj. Actually, the candidate for the seminar was someone else at the beginning. It's just that. Yunj, you know that in society, no matter where you are, there will always be unreasonable realities and dark sides. These words were obviously telling her that the original candidate had been removed because he had a backer. So it was changed to Director Lin. Hearing this, Bai Yunj snorted coldly, her eyes extremely cold. Bai Mingzhang, who was giving Principal Xiang a look that almost made his eyes cramp, was so angry that he was about to choke. If he continued to spout nonsense to Bai Yunj would probably smash their seminar tomorrow. Really? Then your seminar is quite interesting. Bai Yunj's calm words made Bai Mingzhang close his eyes unconsciously. He had already expected the tragic outcome. The people in the seminar probably didn't know that although Director Lin did not have a blood relationship, the little girl she picked up 20 years ago was famous for her bad temper in the industry. Just as expected. After Bai Yunj went out, before Bai Mingzhang could speak, she had already called Director He of the Institute. She laughed coldly, her tone filled with a chill that made even Bai Mingzhang tremble. Director He, do you know about the recent seminar in the northern part of Continent K? Director He's interest was piqued as he asked with a gossipy expression, What seminar? There's an infectious disease in the north. The seminar has changed the original candidate and asked our Director Lin to go to our nation for research. Bai Yunj licked the corner of her lips and chuckled softly. What? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Hearing this, Director He's eyelids twitched. Who the F***ck dared to think that this master was easy to bully? Yunj, maybe Director Lin is willing to do this too? Director He also remembered Director Lin's good temper and wanted to smooth things over. However, Bai Yunj sneered and said coldly, You're willing? Dean He, I don't buy the great and glorious role model crap. I don't mind standing in the front, but the people around me can't. If anything happens to our Lin Academy, don't blame me for falling out with you. After saying that, Bai Yunj's eyes flashed with hostility. Dean he shuddered and quickly remembered Bei Yunj's terrifying temper. He immediately coaxed this ancestor. I'll settle it. Yunj, don't be angry. Let's talk things over. He was really going to die. Did none of the idiots at the conference know her true identity, or did they forget her ruthless personality that could flip the heavens? Director he comforted Bei Yunj anxiously until Bei Yunj hung up the phone. However, he had mixed feelings and could not figure it out. How did Director Lin, a person with an unbelievably good temper, raise such a devil? However, after seeing this scene, Bai Mingzhang instantly understood. Indeed, Bei Yunj's irritable personality was the best at dealing with scoundrels who were full of righteousness and morality. He had argued about this 4 or 5 times, but the other party had always prevaricated. But with this person's temper, if that group of people really dared to prevaricate, Bei Yunj would probably even dare to dig up their ancestors' graves. Chapter 1292. Bei Yunj turned around and saw that Bai Mingzhang was there too. Grandpa Bai. Bei Yunj had acknowledged Bai Mingzhang's identity. Hearing that Lin Lanjuan's daughter had already acknowledged him, Bai Mingzhang's eyes were beaming. Yunj, I heard that you're at a bottleneck? Bei Yunj hummed casually and did not avoid this topic. How long has it been? Bai Mingzhang could not help asking. Bei Yunj glanced at him and thought for a moment. It's been a month. But half a month ago, I saw you publish a thesis, Bai Mingzhang said instinctively. Bei Yunj did not know how much of a sensation she caused every time she published a thesis. She said carelessly, I wrote this for fun. Bai Mingzhang still remembered his son's student. Because of the high standard and high volume of theses every week, he almost went bald while staying up late. Every day he would definitely howl 3 times. When will you be a human? Do you think you're being polite by publishing a thesis 3 days before the final exam? When can you enter the bottleneck? Every thesis was the key point of their exam and they had to memorize the thesis. Therefore, if someone asked who had been the shadow in the lives of the research students all these years, it would definitely be her. Unfortunately, these flowers of the motherland did not know that they were already at a bottleneck. However, the speed at which she published her thesis was still as fast as eating and drinking. Bai Mingzhang took a deep breath and had no choice but to face the tricks of a genius. Relax. You're still young. You'll have the ability in another 3 to 5 years. Bei Yunj's long eyelashes fluttered as she looked at Bai Mingzhang. She chuckled and raised an eyebrow slowly. I'll only give myself half a year to break through the bottleneck. Bai Mingzhang asked, So, you have a plan? Yeah, I want to get a few more awards at the beginning of the year to welcome the new year, Bei Yunj said lazily. If these words were said outside, it would be extremely arrogant. However, the person who said this was, it would be best if you can break through in half a year. Although Bai Mingzhang found it hard to believe that Bei Yunj could break through the bottleneck in half a year, he still wanted to give Bei Yunj confidence. After all, he had spent at least 2 years in his bottleneck. Meanwhile, Director he had just contacted the people in the seminar and tried to persuade them to change to a biologist from country R. However, he did not expect to be ridiculed. When Zhong Xinglin found out about this, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. If it weren't for Dean he stopping him, he would have scolded that group of dogs who didn't know how to back themselves up. These people always took advantage of Lin Lanjuan's good temper and tricked her into doing the project. Even after so many years of retirement, Lin Lanjun still wouldn't let her go. Old he, don't discuss this with them. Leave it to me. After Zhong Xinglin finished speaking, he called Yu Guang, the former director of the First Research Institute of the Ministry of National Defense. Old Yu, I don't know if you know about Lanjun going overseas for research. But you have to tell your students properly. If anything happens to Lanjun, see if my girl will let your students off. When this girl's temper flares up, it's not as simple as falling out with you. You should understand why so many famous schools and research institutes in country are willing to work with our computing institute unconditionally in the past 2 years. Isn't it because of all of them? Chapter 1293. Indeed, Yu Guang did not know about this matter. After hearing the cause and effect, he could not suppress his anger. He did not expect that group of people from the seminar to dare to do such a thing. The higher-ups also stipulated that it was best for retired or old researchers in our country to stay away from the risk zone. And this collaborative research would probably require this group of biologists to go deep into the northern part of continent K. However, with Lin Lanjuan's age and condition, it was not suitable for her to go to the northern part of continent K. It was no wonder that Bei Yunj was angry. Old Zhong, I'll settle this matter. Don't be anxious. Yu Guang sighed. However, after Lan Jun, there's indeed no one who can compare to her in the biological field. It's such a pity. What's a pity? Yunj is still young. If you really think it's a pity, let her inherit her grandmother's mantle? Zhong Xinglin teased casually, but he did not expect this to come true. Come on, are you treating Yunj as 10 people? Yu Guang almost wanted to roll his eyes. It was not easy for a genius to appear in the country. He did not want Bei Yunj to collapse from exhaustion at such a young age. After the chat, Yu Guang did not look for the people from the seminar. Instead, he reported the matter directly. Just as the people from the seminar were leisurely thinking about how to persuade Lin Lanjun to complete the project for someone else, a document report was sent down. After they finished scanning the entire document, their expressions changed instantly. The higher-ups did not agree to Lin Lanjun taking on this mission and requested to change the candidate immediately. What's going on? Why are the higher-ups suddenly interfering in this matter? The expressions of the people from the seminar were ugly as they remembered that the people from the Computing Institute had come to ask them to change the candidate yesterday. Since when did the Computing Institute have so much power? They actually asked the higher-ups to change their candidate? The people from the seminar were in a difficult position. After the other candidate's family found out that the project could not be changed, they immediately rushed to the office for tea. The middle-aged woman maintained herself very well. There were only faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, but her gaze was sharp and she gave off an overbearing aura. President Ma, didn't we agree to let Mrs. Lin take over the project? Now that your attitude has suddenly changed, are you playing with me? Madam, how would I dare? Chairman Ma was at a loss for words. The document from the higher-ups meant that this matter was already set in stone. I've heard that Madam Lin doesn't associate with high officials and nobles, and that she's an honest and kind person. The middle-aged woman's tone was filled with sarcasm. I didn't expect her to be so capable. Madam Lin didn't say anything and you changed your mind? Chairman Ma said bitterly, Madam, this is actually an experience for He Jun. Why don't you? Before he could finish his sentence, the middle-aged woman smashed the teacup on the table, spilling the tea all over the floor. She sneered, President Ma, do you really think I'm here to drink tea with you? It was impossible for He Jun to go to such a dangerous place. I only have one son. Hearing those words, Guild Leader Ma's headache worsened. The next moment, Mother He's expression softened a little, but the coldness in her eyes remained. How about this? Ask Lin Lanjun to come over right now. I want to talk to her face to face. For a moment, Chairman Ma was even more afraid that Mother He would cause trouble. But not long after. Chairman Ma still gave Bai Mingzhang a call and briefly told him about this matter. Chapter 1294. At this moment, Bai Mingzhang was playing chess with Yu Guang. After receiving President Ma's call, he turned on the speakerphone so that Yu Guang could hear everything clearly. Professor Yu, these are all good students you've taught, Bai Mingzhang said calmly after hanging up the call. He spoke in a bureaucratic tone all day long and did not look like a researcher at all. Yu Guang did not speak, but he was disappointed. Seeing Bai Mingzhang about to get up, he could not help asking, What are you going to do? If Lanjun goes, she will definitely be bullied. It's better if I go. As soon as Bai Mingzhang finished speaking, Yu Guang rolled his eyes. Who do you think you are? You're already so old. Aren't you ashamed? What's wrong? I just like Lanjun and can't bear to see her suffer. Professor, you can't teach your students well, so do you still want to teach me now? Bai Mingzhang mocked him sarcastically. This old thing was really unreasonable. Yu Guang pressed between his eyebrows. What I mean is don't go. Since the other party is a relative, could it be that Lanjun doesn't have any relatives? Bai Mingzhang was stunned. What do you mean? If you go, Lanjun and you will be gossiped about together if word gets out. Doesn't Lanjun still have a granddaughter? Yu Guang raised an eyebrow, not caring about his student's life and death. Who dares to gossip about us? Bai Mingzhang was silent for a moment. Old Yu, is that really your student? He was too good at finding trouble for his student. That person was definitely the owner of Shiraba. We have to teach them a lesson, Yu Guang said calmly. Bai Mingzhang frowned, but he was a little worried. Yunj is a girl after all. What if she gets bullied? The corners of Yu Guang's mouth twitched. What the hell, girl? Had their research institute forgotten how many times they had gone to the police station to fish that fellow out? At this moment, the owner of Shiraba that the two of them were talking about was still drinking soy milk as he buried his head in the documents. After the call, Pei Yunj was also biting on a transparent bag as she asked in a low and muffled voice, "Grandpa Bai, what happened?" Bai Mingzhang told Bei Yunj about President Ma. He paused again. "Since the other party is waiting, why don't I go with you?" After Bei Yunj heard this, the corners of her lips, which were biting the transparent soy milk bag, curled up slightly, and there was a hint of sarcasm in her eyes. Until she lazily raised her head, her Adam's apple bobbed a few times. After she finished drinking, she squeezed the transparent bag into a ball with one hand and threw it accurately into the trash can. She said casually, "No need, I'll deal with it. Grandpa Bai, you don't have to tell my grandma about this." Bai Mingzhang's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but smile warmly. Lanjun has always been unpopular. She hasn't even seen her only son in 2 years. She probably doesn't have the fortune to meet him. However, it is her fortune to have a granddaughter like you. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment before he said slowly, "Lin Jianan didn't dare to come back because I taught him a lesson. I warned him not to come back and seek death." By Mingzhang, the atmosphere suddenly fell into silence. Just as Bai Mingzhang was on tenterhooks and was starting to panic if this ancestor would smash the door of the seminar, Bei Yunj was already walking along the long corridor. According to the office number the other party had mentioned before Bei Yunj entered, she heard a voice inside, "When will Lin Lanjun arrive? She's so arrogant that she can't even be invited, right?" Chapter 1295. Chairman Ma looked troubled. "Madam, Director Lin is old after all?" Hearing this, Mother He immediately sneered. "Chairman Ma, don't forget how you got to this position. Who are you speaking up for now?" Bei Yunj stopped in her tracks. Her eyes darkened slightly as she twirled the beautiful and special ring on her finger. "Madam He, Director Lin is indeed not suitable to go abroad." Chairman Ma's expression instantly turned ugly. Back then the He family had indeed helped Chairman Ma. Is a scientific researcher so precious? He mother was angry and disdainful. "I heard that Lin Lanjuan's son ran away, right? Since she has nothing to worry about, why would she let my son suffer like this?" Then Mother He's eyes were filled with disgust as she continued to sneer. "Lin Lanjun is just pretending to be noble. Otherwise, why would she still be entangled with Bai Mingzhang at such an old age? Isn't she ashamed at all? When Mother He gave birth to her eldest son, she was not young, so she was the same age as Lin Lanjun. And in that generation, Lin Lanjun was the object of admiration for many scholars and young masters. Therefore, there were many older women who still looked at Lin Lanjun with the eyes of the old society. When they saw that Lin Lanjun was in dire straits and had no one to rely on, they felt that Lin Lanjun deserved it. Who asked her to be involved with so many men when she was young? The seeds of evil left in the old society harmed women and the working class. Just as Mother He was about to say something, the door was suddenly kicked open. Mother He and Chairman Ma were startled. However, when they turned their heads, they did not expect that the person who walked in was a beautiful girl. However, the cold aura around her made people feel cold from the bottom of their hearts. "Who are you?" Mother He had not recovered yet and her voice was a little shrill. "Aren't you looking for Lin Lanjun?" Pei Yunj glanced at them slowly. "I'm her granddaughter. You can tell me if you have anything to say." Mother He did not know where Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter came from, but Chairman Ma suddenly remembered that this should be the daughter of the Qin family. However, even the Qin family could not easily offend a powerful family like the He family, right? Mother He didn't care about Bei Yunj's background. She sneered, "Tell you? Lin Lanjun hasn't even left the country yet, and she's already pretending that her leg isn't working?" He made it sound as if Lin Lanjuan's decision to leave the country was already set in stone. Bei Yunj glanced at her, her beautiful red lips spitting out extremely calm and infuriating words. "Since Madam is here, could it be that your son isn't pretending to be dead but is really dead?" Even President Ma was scared witless when he heard this. She couldn't believe that the person in front of her was Principal Lin's daughter. As expected, Mother He's expression changed. She was instantly flustered and exasperated. "You." She took a deep breath, then pointed at Bei Yunj and sneered, "Well, I didn't expect Lin Lanjun to be so powerful. Raising such a sharp-tongued granddaughter." Bei Yunj slowly peeled the soft candy in her hand and laughed lazily. "What's wrong? Your son is lying down. Can't he open his mouth?" Chairman Ma's eyelids twitched violently. In this extremely oppressive atmosphere, he didn't even dare to breathe. Why was Principal Lin's granddaughter so different from Principal Lin herself? Seeing that Mother He's face was ashen and trembling with anger, Chairman Ma knew that this matter was getting more difficult. Principal Lin was probably going to get into trouble. Chapter 1296. Mother. He gritted her teeth. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you know what happens to people who talk to me like that? Bei Yunsh took off her black baseball cap and ran her fingers through her hair. Then she casually sat on the sofa. She had an aura that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't something a person of her age should possess. Madam, I didn't come here today to listen to you get angry. Bei Yunsh leaned back lazily. Her fingertips gently touched her temples as she played with her cell phone. Tell me, madam, why are you looking for Director Lin? Can you replace Lin Lanjun? What right do you have to negotiate with me? Mother. He thought this silly girl was ridiculous. Who did she think she was? She was so full of herself. You don't intend to negotiate, do you? Bei Yunsh was in a good mood today. After she put down her cell phone, she smiled and asked slowly. Mother. He laughed coldly. Then she picked up the black tea on the table and took a sip. At least you know what's good for you. Just as she finished speaking, President Ma suddenly received 2 emails at almost the same time. His eyelids twitched. He had a bad feeling about this. Then President Ma opened the first email. After reading it carefully, he heaved a sigh of relief. His heart was filled with joy. Old master. He has changed the notice. The final recommendation is still Director Lin Lanjun. If it weren't for Bei Yunsh, President Ma would have stood up excitedly and bowed to Mother He. Mother He was born into a prestigious family. As the only daughter who was doted on, even her husband had married into her family. Her son took her mother's surname. Naturally, she did things her own way and didn't care about others. When Mother He heard this, wrinkles appeared at the corners of her eyes. She turned her head and said, Little girl, did you hear that? You should let your grandmother prepare to go abroad as soon as possible. This can be considered as doing a good deed for the country and its people. Bei Yunsh only looked up at Mother He. However, President Ma was extremely afraid of Bei Yunsh's mouth. He immediately interrupted her and said coldly, Miss Pei, you don't know how difficult this opportunity is for others. Some people want to go but don't have the right. Finally, the person on the sofa laughed and said unhurriedly, You're right. When Chairman Ma heard this, before he could catch his breath, he heard Bei Yunsh continue, So, I've just sent a resume to you, President Ma. I plan to work hard and fight for this spot. You. Chairman Ma's expression turned ugly. He didn't know what she was doing. At her age, she probably hadn't even finished college, right? There are strict requirements for registration. Even laboratory assistants have to have a postgraduate degree or below. Furthermore, without a national award, it will not be allowed to pass. Chairman Ma frowned. When Mother He heard this, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. He didn't know what sin Lin Lanjun had committed to raise such a crazy and stupid granddaughter. Were they treating the project as child's play? What qualifications did she have to fight for a collaboration spot in the laboratory? Bei Yunsh, don't mess around, Chairman Ma said with a dark expression. Bei Yunsh said unhurriedly, What? Could it be that even the position of a laboratory assistant has been decided? Chairman Ma was so angry that he sneered. Miss Pei, you're so young. Don't be so arrogant. What capabilities do you think you have? As Chairman Ma spoke, he clicked on the resume. However, his voice suddenly stopped. Chapter 1297. Chairman Ma's sneer suddenly froze. His pupils constricted and he stared blankly at the words on the screen. Application for collaboration, recommendation for experimental project applicant. Gender, female, age, 21, employer, Computing Institute, main achievements, Academician of Country A's Academy of Engineering, K. Azibusaka Computing Award, Farisk Mathematics Award. Chairman Ma almost threw his mouse away. He jumped up from his chair with a look of horror. What the hell was this? Chairman Ma's thoughts were in a mess. He felt that his brain wasn't enough. Was this the new scientific researcher who had to sign a confidentiality agreement when they met? Impossible. How could she only be 21 years old? Chairman Ma's face turned pale, but he suddenly understood why the higher-ups valued this person so much and even spent so much effort just to protect her safety. This was because she was really a top genius that was hard to come by in thousands of years. There aren't many prizes. There are only 2. Bei Yunsh continued unhurriedly, but 2 days ago the organizer called me and nominated this year's physics award. It will be announced at the end of the year. Chairman Ma's face was slightly distorted, as if his muscles were necrotic. Physics award? So the rumors in the industry were true? She was nominated for the Norston Physics Award again? Chairman Ma suddenly came to his senses. You really are. Chairman Ma felt as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. He didn't dare to say that name and could only stare at Bei Yunj in horror. No wonder. It turned out that the Computing Institute suddenly intervened in Lin Lanjuan's matter not because of the friendship between Zhong Xinglin and Lin Lanjun. It was because Lin Lanjun picked up the young lady and raised her. She was the future successor of the Computing Institute. What kind of good luck did Lin Lanjun have? Could it be that doing good deeds was really blessed by the heavens? If she picked up one, she wouldn't have to worry for the rest of her life. Mother, he frowned. She couldn't understand what the two of them were talking about. She sneered. Chairman Ma, although this young lady only won 2 prizes since she is filial, why don't you let her be a laboratory assistant? At most, the He family will pay for her food and accommodation expenses. Chairman Ma's eyelids twitched wildly. Only 2 awards? Regardless of which award it was, the He family might not be able to win one even if they were counted for 180 generations. Also, would it be the He family's turn to take care of the food? If they were in a foreign country, the food that could be delivered to them would have to go through more than 10 layers of safety checks. After all, this was someone who could only see him after signing a confidentiality agreement. Whenever they felt uncomfortable, the higher-ups would probably hold a meeting and carefully select the best doctors in the country to treat them. An outstanding soldier could intimidate the surrounding countries that were ready to make a move and protect their borders. And a super scientific genius could change the fate of a country. However, in the past few years, the number of talents in the country had been increasing rapidly, and many of them had been poached by the neighboring countries. Everyone had been trying to figure out that for a genius of this level to stay in the country, the higher-ups must have paid a hefty price. Chairman Ma was instantly terrified. If he were to risk his life to become a laboratory assistant who was infected with the virus, the higher-ups would probably fly over in a plane and smash his head into the ground. Let the water in his brain be used to water the flower buds of his motherland. Chapter 1298. Chairman Ma's face turned pale, and he could only force an ugly smile. What? Miss Pei, you must be joking with me. Bei Yunj glanced at him and said calmly, Why would I? I also want to do something good for the country and the people before I die. Chairman Ma's heart turned cold. It was over. She had him in her sights. Miss Pei, you're still young. No matter who you ask, you can't take this risk. Chairman Ma broke out in a cold sweat. He was so frightened by Bei Yunj that he was about to cry. He didn't expect that helping the He family would provoke a terrifying existence that he couldn't afford to offend. Ma, what do you mean? Mother, he immediately turned hostile and stood up. Are you saying that this young girl's life is more valuable than my son's? Chairman Ma's lips moved, but he couldn't say a word. He couldn't afford to offend the He family, but he couldn't afford to offend this young ancestor either. What was he doing? He was just better at reincarnating than others. However, for a super genius like him to be born in country A, to a certain extent, it was a blessing from the heavens. Mrs. He, I'm doing this for the good of the He family. Chairman Ma's expression turned ugly, and he could only hint to Mother He not to go crazy at this time. Oh, Chairman Ma, you're making decisions for the He family? An old and solemn voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and turned to look. It was a white-haired old man. Mother He walked over happily. Dad, why are you here? I'm just afraid that you won't abide by the rules and make things difficult for Chairman Ma. Elder He had lived for decades more than others, so his words were hard to find fault with. He was authoritative and confident. However, he changed the topic and looked at Chairman Ma calmly. I'll also see how Chairman Ma will personally issue orders. Chairman Ma's face turned pale instantly. How could he dare to issue such an order? He didn't dare to offend Elder He, and even more so. Just as Chairman Ma was in a dilemma, Mother He sneered. How can Chairman Ma issue orders? In Chairman Ma's eyes, Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter's life is more important than Ah Jun's. Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter? Only then did old He look at Bei Yunj with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He did not expect that Lin Lanjun could raise such an extraordinary granddaughter. But soon old He also smiled. Little girl, are you here to reject President Ma on behalf of your grandmother? No, I'm here to apply for the position of a lab assistant, Bei Yunj said slowly. Little girl, acting shamelessly is useful at home, but no one will care about you outside. Do you think your life is valuable? Old He's smile didn't reach his eyes. Instead, he snorted in anger, appearing especially contemptuous. You're just in your early 20s, right? He should also understand how to lower his head to reality. As the only successor of the He family, His life is destined to be more important than the others. Then, old master, he glanced at Bei Yunj and said, "You'd better persuade your grandma. As long as she agrees, I can fulfill any of her requests." Before Chairman Ma could speak, old he ordered, "Chairman Ma, aren't you going to release the document?" This isn't." Chairman Ma was instantly forced into a dilemma. His expression was extremely ugly. "Oh, what a rare guest. I didn't expect old he to be here too." The voice of Bei Yunj's old acquaintance sounded from outside the door. Chapter 1299. Bei Yunj glanced at Yu Guang indifferently and continued to play with her phone. Yu Guang looked at the person sitting on the sofa. Bei Yunj was indeed angry when it came to Lin Lanjun. She even started to pretend that she didn't know him. "Professor Yu." Even Mother He greeted Yu Guang politely when she saw him. After all, although Yu Guang was only a professor now, he had made a lot of contributions and was one of the most important people in the scientific research field. He was also the closest to the higher-ups. "Isn't this old Yu? Why do you have time to come here?" Old he laughed heartily and spoke to Yu Guang in a pleasing manner. Chairman Ma saw these big shots and wanted to hide in a corner, not daring to speak. But the next moment, Yu Guang smiled faintly and said, "Isn't this about the infectious disease in the north of Continent K?" Yu Guang couldn't help but say, "Bei Yunj, don't you have any manners now?" "Who knew?" Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and said perfunctorily, "Hello, Professor Yu. Do you want me to pour you a cup of tea?" Yu Guang was speechless. How did this last develop such a temper? Old He's smile froze. He didn't expect that there would be a junior who dared to treat Yu Guang with such an attitude. What was even more unexpected was that Yu Guang wasn't angry at all and was even friendly. "Fine, you see, I won't complain to your grandmother." Yu Guang suddenly lost his cold appearance and became an unreasonable old man. Bei Yunj was speechless. "Okay, let's deal with the matter first." Yu Guang had just received a call from the higher-ups. When he found out that Bei Yunj had applied for the virus laboratory, he immediately called Bai Mingzhang to understand the situation. After that, he rushed here without stopping to rest. The higher-ups said that no matter what, they couldn't let anything happen. "Old He, Chairman Ma, let's have a meeting together." Yu Guang glanced at Mother He. Unrelated people can leave first. Mother He didn't look too good, but after glancing at Old He, she still left in her high heels. But just as Yu Guang was about to speak, he saw Bei Yunj walking towards the door as well. "Bei Yunj, where are you going?" Yu Guang was furious. Bei Yunj turned around and replied perfunctorily. She leaned against the wall and tilted her head with a smile. "I'm going home to hide my grandma." Yu Guang's eyelids jumped. He didn't care about this Pei's perfunctory words. "Stay here. Let's have a meeting later." Elder He couldn't help but frown. He didn't understand Yu Guang's intentions. What right did this little girl have to attend a meeting with them? Seminar. 20 people sat around a long table. When everyone saw Yu Guang sitting on the left side of the main seat, they couldn't help but be puzzled. Could it be that this seat was reserved for Elder He? After all, Chairman Ma wasn't qualified to sit above Yu Guang. But even if it was Old He, it didn't make sense. Everyone's thoughts ran wild, but after Old He arrived. When Old He saw Yu Guang sitting on the main seat, he was stunned for a moment. But he knew in his heart that this seat was definitely not reserved for him. So he walked to Yu Guang's side and sat on the second seat on the left side of the main seat. 3 minutes later, almost everyone had arrived. Just as everyone was waiting to see who would sit on the main seat, the door was suddenly pushed open. From outside the door, an extremely young and beautiful girl walked in. She casually glanced at everyone and naturally walked to the main seat and sat down. Chapter 1300. Her voice was casual and cold, but she was not afraid at all. "There are quite a lot of people here." On the other hand, the others were inexplicably frightened by Bei Yunj's glare. Bei Yunj had been sitting in the host's seat since her previous life. Naturally, she was used to it. However, the others instantly exploded. Who was this girl? What right did she have to sit in the host's seat? One had to know that Zhou Moping was sitting on the left. "This is the agreement for all of you. Before the meeting, please sign it." Zhou Moping began to arrange for everyone to sign the agreement. Right then, when everyone received the agreement, they originally thought that it was a confidential matter that required everyone to sign the agreement. However, when they flipped to the first page, they were completely stunned. This was a familiar confidentiality requirement. In the country, there were very few who could receive such treatment, especially in the scientific research field. True enough, everyone scanned the last few lines of the agreement, Subject of confidentiality agreement. Everyone's expression changed. They suddenly looked up at Bei Yunsh. No one expected that, to be so young. However, at this moment, holding the agreement in his hands, Old He's expression was the worst. Old He slowly looked up at Bei Yunsh. His mind was in a mess. He completely did not expect that Director Lin's granddaughter would be a mystery in the scientific research field. Why is YY here? Someone asked softly and excitedly. To them, such an existence was destined to write history and be a celebrity for eternity. Let everyone know that. I'm here today as Lin Lanjuan's relative to participate in the public discussion of this seminar, Zhou Moping said slowly. However, as soon as she finished speaking, only 3 words appeared in everyone's mind. It's over. How could she be Lin Lanjuan's relative? Do you have anything to say to everyone? Zhou Moping turned and asked. Initially, Zhou Moping thought that Bei Yunj would at least give her some face and try peaceful means before resorting to force. However, when Bei Yunj heard this, she really glanced at the rest of the people present and snorted coldly. Everyone, you're very bold. The threat was blatant. Everyone's hearts, which were already uneasy, trembled even more. True enough. This big shot dared to say such harsh words in front of everyone. But at that time, no one would have thought that the granddaughter that Director Lin picked up for free would be Zhou Moping's lips twitched. Did he want her to intimidate everyone present? However, Zhou Moping glanced at the group of people who had a look of fear on their faces and slowly said, I heard that during the seminar, all the staff members were agitated and said that they had to recommend Lin Lanjun this time. Since that's the case, does anyone have a reason? After saying this, the arena fell into a dead silence. At this moment, the person sitting on the main seat felt flustered even when he breathed, not to mention the terrifying expression in his eyes that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. It was numb. This time he had stepped on a soft persimmon and accidentally stepped on a hard nail. Didn't you say that other than Lin Lanjun, no one can save the people in Northern K continent? Zhou Moping continued to ask. The members of the seminar were even more frightened. In fact, although Lin Lanjun was suitable, according to convention, the person who should be recommended the most was He Jun. After all, in addition to being young and healthy, He Jun was also talented in biology and happened to have in-depth research in virology and infectious diseases. However, everyone was eager to see how President Ma had soared through the He family. Who would dare to offend the He family? Chapter 1301. If everyone has decided on this, then I think everyone can also decide on the candidates for the laboratory assistants. After that, Zhou Moping displayed the application information of the few laboratory assistants on the screen. Everyone's eyelids twitched when they saw that there was actually someone among the applicants. This person wanted to be a laboratory assistant for the project? If they really went to Country R and went to the northern part of Continent K with those researchers, if something happened, wouldn't they be done for? It's not suitable. How can you go? Someone suggested with a dark expression. What? What do you mean? Bei Yunj looked up slowly and asked with a faint smile. No. That place is dangerous and backward. You're still young. How can you? His voice stopped abruptly. Everyone knew what he meant by his unfinished words. How could he send himself to his death? But the moment he said that, it was obvious why they wanted Lin Lanjun to go to the northern part of Continent K. Wasn't this a slap to their faces? However, he had actually applied to accompany Lin Lanjun abroad. This move had simply forced them into a corner. As long as they agreed to go, then if anything happened, none of them would be able to escape responsibility. Actually, although Director Lin is the most respected senior in the field of biology, there are still many talented juniors. There's no need for Director Lin to go personally. Not long after the awkwardness, someone immediately changed his mind. Yes, I agree too. Everyone chimed in. This made the smile in Zhou Moping's eyes disappear. His expression was indifferent. Is that so? Then do you have anyone else to recommend? As soon as he finished speaking, he felt the probing gazes around him and his expression changed. He was furious. What did this bunch of idiots mean? They knew that they couldn't afford to offend him, so they dared to send his grandson to his death? Mr. He Jun is indeed young and promising. It depends on He Jun's wishes. The person who spoke didn't dare to look at Old He, and this feeling of holding in a belly full of anger caused Old He's face to darken even more. These wretches who changed their sails according to the wind and sucked up to those in power. He Jun is still young. He still needs experience. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. What? Is your grandson still in high school? Old He's expression was ugly. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. The atmosphere became awkward. Speaking of age, no one was younger than the person sitting on the main seat. However, even so, when he was in high school, he already dared to reject Farisk and even beat up this racist boss on the spot. And the young grandson, that old master he was talking about, was already in his 30s. Compared to this, it was an eye-catching beating. Since there are still objections to the recommended candidates, why don't we leave this matter to everyone to discuss? Zhou Moping glanced at them and said calmly. Although he was furious when he found out about what had happened to Lin Lanjun, he couldn't forget his bottom line as a researcher. Therefore, he wouldn't force the person from the He family to go if he wasn't willing. Hearing Zhou Moping's words, everyone finally heaved a sigh of relief, but the clothes on their backs were drenched in cold sweat. Fortunately, there was still a chance to remedy the situation. However, as soon as the meeting was over, the members received a bloody scolding from their leader. As for Bei Yunj, it was a different situation. Chapter 1302. What? Miss Pei, this is your application form. The person in charge looked young. He handed the application form back to Bei Yunj and smiled carefully. It's our first time meeting. I'm the person in charge of the seminar, Hu Xian. I used to be Director Lin's student. Bei Yunj only glanced at him calmly, but the surrounding atmosphere was getting more and more oppressive. Even Zhou Moping could not help but cough lightly. Yunj. Bei Yunj played with her phone and did not even look up. What's the matter, Professor Zhou? Zhou Moping was speechless. Before Zhou Moping could speak, a caller ID suddenly appeared on Bei Yunj's phone. Zhou Moping glanced at it from the corner of his eye and saw that it was Lin Lanjun. Just as expected. In the next moment, Bei Yunj, whose eyes were originally cold, answered the call and her tone was unbelievably gentle. Grandma, what's wrong? Can't I call you if there's nothing? Lin Lanjun mumbled, but her tone was a little guilty. She secretly glanced at Bai Mingzhang, who was hinting at her with his eyes. However, Bei Yunj's eyes curved as she lowered her head and smiled patiently. Don't, Director Lin. Who provoked you? Are you venting your anger on me? When Zhou Moping and Hu Xian heard this completely different tone, their eyes were complicated and they could not help but be envious. Indeed, doing good deeds would be pitted by the heavens. After Director Lin left the laboratory, she had been helping thousands of children study and grow up for so many years. This granddaughter she casually picked up could become a big boss in the future. I heard from your grandpa that you're at the seminar? Lin Lanjun asked. The smile on Bei Yunj's lips did not change, but she glanced at Zhou Moping and Hu Xian calmly. Hu Xian is a good student. He even helped our orphanage in the past. You're not allowed to lose your temper with anyone, understand? Lin Lanjun's gentle voice sounded from the phone. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. Okay. However, Zhou Moping and Hu Xian were still a little uneasy. They did not know if Lin Lanjun's call was useful. Would wild wolf cubs be obedient and listen to others? But after hanging up the phone, Hu Xian heard Bei Yunj's attitude soften a lot. She turned to look at him and said, Mr. Hu, Director Lin said that you should go to her place for tea when you're free. Hu Xian did not even dare to breathe loudly at first, but after hearing this, he was completely relieved. I haven't seen teacher for so long. In 2 days I'll definitely serve tea to you. Hu Xian said immediately. Grandpa Zhou, Mr. Hu, since there's nothing else, I'll head back to school first. Bei Yunj glanced at her watch and did not continue to talk about what had just happened. After Bei Yunj left, Hu Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It's all right, Mississippi. Her temper isn't like what the rumors say. Zhou Moping chuckled. Don't look like it. He turned to look at Hu Xian and said, Little Hu, this is a great kindness. Other than Lanjun, not many words can enter her ears. Yun University. As soon as Bei Yunj returned, she heard people talking about her. Occasionally, 1 or 2 passers-by would even glance at her. Yunj. Song Yao's voice trailed from not far away. Bei Yunj looked away and did not think about the reason for these people's strange gazes. Didn't you have a shoot today? Bei Yunj glanced at her watch. The shoot was delayed, so I wanted to prepare for this performance and the midterm exam. Song Yao could not help knocking her head. She also had a headache about the philosophy department's midterm exam. P.S. I'll go out for a meal first before I update. Don't wait, come and see me tomorrow morning. Chapter 1303. Who knew? Bei Yunj even made sarcastic remarks. Stop knocking. She's not smart to begin with. Song Yao pursed her lips and reached out to knock Bei Yunji's head. The two of them were fooling around and did not notice the subtle expressions of the passers-by. In the teacher's meeting room of Yun University. At this moment, a young-looking boy was the most out of place among the professors. In less than 30 minutes, the boy handed the paper to the professor. "I'm done." The others were surprised. "You're done?" Yun University's admission test for transfer students had always been the so-called hell mode. Even the current students of Yun University might not be able to pass. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to transfer to Yun University. When the boy heard this, he leaned back in his chair arrogantly, crossed his legs and snorted. "I heard that this paper is very difficult? But I think it's average. Your school's standards are really surprising." Hearing this, the professors did not look too good, but after one of them checked the paper, the accuracy rate was as high as 99%. He indeed had the right to be proud. "Forget it. Since I've decided to come to Yun University, I won't mind the abilities of your students." Wang Guanchen adjusted his collar and did not even look at the professors. "Since student Wang has passed our school's computer science exam, then, do you have a class you like? Our professors are all very responsible, and their professional abilities are unquestionable," the principal asked with a faint smile. "Whatever. As long as it's less troublesome." After Wang Guanchen finished speaking, the other professors looked at each other. Actually, they were still willing to take Wang Guanchen in. After all, Wang Guanchen came from the Shi family in Continent K, which was a big family that controlled Laboratory 191. Although they heard that the next successor of Laboratory 191 seemed to be an unknown young man. "Professor C, do you think there can be one more person in your class?" After the principal spoke, Si Qingyan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Guanchen, who had an arrogant expression on his face. "Anything is fine, but I don't have time to be a nanny." After Si Qingyan finished speaking casually, the atmosphere suddenly froze. However, no one dared to point at Si Qingyan. After all, Si Qingyan was also a famous genius in the industry. He had become a computer science professor at Yun University at the age of 26. But when Wang Guanchen heard this, his face completely darkened. Not long after, he asked, "Are you Si Qingyan?" Before Wang Guanchen came, he had also heard of Si Qingyan's name. The official members of the Computing Institute probably knew the famous one. "Wang Guanchen, is something the matter?" Si Qingyan raised his eyebrows lazily. "You don't want to teach me?" Wang Guanchen asked with a sullen face. However, Si Qingyan smiled. "Student Wang, no one doesn't like talented students. However, talent should at least be proportional to a genius illness." After that, Si Qingyan suddenly stood up. "Principal, I'm going to look for our classmate Pei. I'll get going first." "Si Qingyan, what do you mean by this?" Wang Guanchen slammed the table and stood up, looking ferocious because of his anger. "Student Wang, Yun University doesn't lack geniuses." Si Qingyan sneered and left. Only Wang Guanchen was left with a gloomy face. What did Si Qingyan mean? How dare he look down on him? "Why don't you let me guide you, student Wang?" One of the female professors took the initiative to say with a smile. Seeing that Wang Guanchen didn't object, the principal agreed. Suddenly, Wang Guanming asked, "Who is student Pei?" Chapter 1304. Awkwardness appeared on everyone's faces, but no one said anything. A student from the physics department. After the principal answered vaguely, he asked them to leave first. After leaving, the female professor standing beside Wang Guanchen sneered. "Student Wang, as the top scholar of this year's college entrance examination, student Pei has received the favor of our leaders." With that said, she looked at Wang Guanchen and said with a smile, "However, what goes around comes around. Who knows how long she can be smug." The top scholar of the college entrance examination? The corners of Wang Guanchen's lips twitched and he said disdainfully, "Every year there will be a top scholar, but what's the use of a fool who only knows how to study?" Time passed quickly and the gala performance would be held in a few days. The score written by Bei Yunj was not simple, so in order not to drag Bei Yunj down, Song Yao would come to the performance hall to practice when she was free. "Student Wang, this is our Yun University's performance hall." The person who spoke was the president of the student union, Hu Ji, who had confessed to Song Yao in public last time. However, at this moment he was bending down to curry favor with Wang Guanchen. Wang Guanchen had only been here for a few days, but his name had already spread far and wide in Yun University. In the department, Wang Guanchen had provoked the most experienced and authoritative professor and crushed the computing department. As for the computer science department of Yunhua University, the news of a genius transfer student had already spread throughout the entire school. Wang Guanchen looked at Song Yao for a while and suddenly laughed. He said meaningfully, "The girls in your school are quite pretty." Hu Ji's expression froze, then he laughed coldly in a strange manner. "This is the belle of our philosophy department, Song Yao. Her relationship with this year's top scholar is really good." Wang Guanchen's tone turned cold. "That top scholar again?" Hu Ji said, "You know? I heard that the computing key laboratory will prepare a spot for her this year. Why is someone from another department joining in the fun in the computing department's laboratory?" Wang Guanchen looked even more disgusted. Seeing that Wang Guanchen was unhappy, Hu Ji was overjoyed, but his expression did not change. "Yes, I heard that. This year there's only one spot for the key laboratory." "What do you mean? Do you mean that I can't take this spot and directly decide it on someone from the physics department?" Wang Guanchen immediately asked with a dark face. Did these people know that he was a probationary member of Laboratory 191 of the Confederation of K, and compared to the freshmen here, the difference was like heaven and earth? That's hard to say. Who knows, there might be an increase in the quota. Hu Ji immediately comforted him. Wang Guanchen's tone became even more sarcastic. "I don't like sharing a lab with a nerd." As soon as he finished speaking, it was only then that the two of them realized that their conversation had been heard by Song Yao, who had stopped practicing on stage. Before Wang Guanchen could find a topic to talk to Song Yao, he heard a boy's voice not far away. Lu Yuanxi had a bag of snacks in each hand and a bag of baguettes in his mouth. He placed the baguettes on the table and said, "Yao Yao, your black coffee is here. Is Master Pei here yet?" "Not yet." After Song Yao walked down, Lu Yuanxi realized that there were two strangers around. "What's going on?" "Nothing." Song Yao picked up a cup of black coffee and said slowly, "Someone just wants to kick an iron plate." Instantly, Wang Guanchen's expression darkened. Lu Yuanxi raised his eyebrows and immediately understood who the iron plate Song Yao was talking about was. "Oh, someone dares to kick our Master Pei's ass?" Chapter 1305. Lu Yuanxi raised his eyebrows slightly, looking like he was watching a show. How dare a physics student be so arrogant? Wang Guanchen glanced at Lu Yuanxi and Song Yunyao coldly before he turned and left. Seeing this, Lu Yuanxi took out a baguette and took a bite of it casually. "This is that transfer student, right? I heard that she's very capable and doesn't even like the professors in her department." After not hearing Song Yao's reply for a long time, he turned around and saw Song Yao looking at him. She said, "This is Yunji's." Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Then, in front of Song Yao, Lu Yuanxi finished the baguette one after another fiercely, demonstrating his strength fiercely. Song Yao was speechless. "Stop eating," Song Yao said softly as if she was hinting at something. However, when Lu Yuanxi heard this, he wolfed down the food even more excitedly, not feeling like a handsome man at all. Until, suddenly someone slapped his forehead from behind. Lu Yuanxi's face turned red from choking. He turned around and realized that it was the expressionless Bei Yunch. She laughed coldly. "Brother Lu, are you showing off to me?" Lu Yuanxi's back turned cold. *CK. A few minutes later. "Have you heard? There's a transfer student in the computing department recently. Everyone says that she's a big boss with a high IQ." Lu Yuanxi rubbed his head and asked her with interest. Bei Yunch did not take off the silver-rimmed glasses she was wearing in the laboratory. She only bit the baguette and watched Song Yao practice the piano below the stage. "Not interested." "She's very interested in you. She just came to challenge you." Lu Yuanxi raised an eyebrow. Suddenly, Bei Yunch laughed and raised her eyebrows lazily. She asked slowly, "You call this a challenge?" "I've always called this behavior giving away your head." Lu Yuanxi was speechless. He could not win against her. In the conference hall, Wang Guanchen had just entered when it stirred up quite a few heated discussions. "Brother Chin, you're a famous person in our computing department. Look at how enthusiastic the girls in our department are looking at you." The boy beside him looked smug and Wang Guanchen's eyes were filled with confidence. However, the second-year senior in the second row, who was touching up her makeup, rolled her eyes. Did these two people misunderstand the meaning of the word passion? After a while, Wang Guanchen glanced at the girls around him and frowned. There aren't many girls in our department who are good-looking. It was as if these girls were just ornamental objects to him. Those who can watch are all in the art department. After Wang Guanchen and the others finished their discussion, they sat down and realized that the person holding the meeting today was the elderly female professor who was at odds with Wang Guanchen the most. Wang Guanshan's face instantly darkened. He crossed his arms and sneered uncooperatively. Old woman. In the entire computing department, other than Si Qingyin, this old-fashioned Professor Pan had the worst attitude towards him. Who doesn't know that Professor Pan is biased towards girls? It's as if the women in our computer science department can hold up half the sky. The boys crossed their arms and laughed. On the stage, Professor Pan Yenlu pushed up his glasses. Is everyone here? The audience was noisy, but no one answered the question. There were even some boys who deliberately chatted loudly. Until the next moment. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. In the blink of an eye, the crowd saw a beautiful and flamboyant girl. Professor Pan, do you mind having another auditing student? I won't come empty-handed. Bei Yunj tilted her head and shook the bouquet of roses in her hand. Her lips curled up casually. Instantly, the girls present were in an uproar and almost screamed in excitement. She was too flirtatious. Chapter 1306. Ah, Bei Yunj is amazing. Not only is she pretty, but she's also flirtatious and polite. What kind of ideal is this? The girls couldn't help but discuss excitedly. It turned out that girls love to look at pretty girls more than anyone else. Especially someone like Bei Yunj, who had bright and beautiful eyebrows and a lazy aura. She was a classic example of both men and women. At this moment, the senior sitting in the front row deliberately used a loud voice and deliberately dragged out a laugh. This is the enthusiasm of the masses. In an instant, Wang Guanshan's face darkened as if he had been ridiculed. He could indeed feel the enthusiasm of the crowd as soon as this person walked in. It was so high that it made his scalp tingle. Even the stern Professor Pan couldn't hide the smile at the corners of his mouth. Bei Yunj? Wang Guanshan couldn't believe it. This is a girl? He had always thought that the top scorer of the college entrance examination would be a nerd with glasses as thick as the bottom of a beer bottle. However, he didn't expect that the Bei Yunj who walked in front of him was completely different from what he had expected. Her eyes were beautiful and bright, but her every move was unruly, making people afraid to approach her. However, she also had the perfect amount of politeness and elegance. Even among her peers there was no one with this kind of aura. You're here every day, but I don't see you changing departments. Hurry up and find a seat. Professor Pan snorted coldly. He didn't seem to like Bei Yunj, but he hugged the roses that Bei Yunj had given him and smiled even more deeply. Lin Lanjun and Professor Pan had always had a good relationship, so Bei Yunj would occasionally come to Professor Pan's classes. Is your professor always like this? When he asked me to help out in the laboratory last week, I thought it would be another touching teacher-student relationship. So sad. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and dragged out the end of her words lazily as she sighed and asked the senior student sitting in the front row. When the girls around her heard this, they were originally nervous because of Professor Pan's meeting, but they immediately relaxed. No one would have thought that the most outrageous rumor from before seemed to be true. This top scorer's father, who couldn't even write down a single record of any disciplinary violations or fights, was surprisingly well-mannered and cultured in a certain way? No wonder Bei Yunj had been stuffed with love letters by both men and women when she was in high school. After being glared at by Professor Pan, Bei Yunj, who was sitting in the first row, was still the center of attention. Sitting in the middle, Wang Guanshan could hear a lot of discussion. His face was getting darker and darker. It's not uncommon to see top students in Yun University, but what is a top student like him if he's not the Gu King? Don't you think that when Master Pei sits there, his aura is even more flirtatious than a guy's? Oh, look at Master Pei. He's making our senior belle blush so much. As soon as they looked up, they saw the prettiest girl in their department talking about something. The girl next to her, who had her arms crossed lazily, suddenly leaned over and listened patiently. From the senior's point of view, she saw Bei Yunj curl her lips and murmur in a low voice. In an instant, the senior's ears turned red. Wang Guanshan's expression became even uglier. He never thought that the attention that had been on him would be snatched away by a girl. This time, the department plans to cooperate with the other 8 universities in Beichuan for the competition. If you want to participate, you can sign up with me. After Professor Pan finished speaking, he heard the sound of the boys playing games below the stage. He couldn't help but purse his lips. Chapter 1307. The others couldn't help but frown when they saw that there were boys in the department who didn't give Professor Pan face. The boys in the department had always thought that Professor Pan was biased towards girls, but in fact, Professor Pan was never biased towards boys. From elementary school to high school, most teachers would focus on boys. They thought that boys matured later but had more potential than girls. However, they forgot that most of the top students in the class were girls. Even the highest scorer in the computer science college entrance exam was a girl. Professor Pan had been teaching for decades and had witnessed the growth of 2 generations. He also loved to passionately talk about how girls should be independent and have freedom of thought in class. However, Professor Pan's educational philosophy remained the same until this year's faculty quiz. Because the top 4 were all girls, it caused many male students to explode with anger. They thought that Professor Pan was biased towards girls and didn't care about the results of the boys. Therefore, when Wang Guanchen transferred to the department, most of the boys naturally sided with Wang Guanchen. They were looking forward to Wang Guanchen torturing this conservative female professor and letting everyone know that the best in the department were the boys. If you don't want to listen or don't want to participate in the competition, you can leave. Professor Pan held the mouse and said calmly without looking up. Hearing this, Wang Guanchen sneered, then straightened up and suddenly started to operate the computer in the back row. A few minutes later, the computer screen on the stage suddenly turned blue and even the slides went black. Professor Pan was stunned and quickly tried to restore the computer program. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. The boys in the back row saw Professor Pan on the stage like a headless fly and they all laughed as if they had vented their anger. Professor Pan, we're still waiting for you to speak. Yeah, Professor, don't waste everyone's time. After saying this, there were also some boys who couldn't stand it but didn't want to have any interaction with this group of people. As for Wang Guanchen, he looked at his masterpiece on the stage and crossed his arms. He raised the corner of his mouth and looked down at this scene condescendingly. No one had ever been able to restore the system that he had broken. Suddenly, before anyone could react, someone in the front row asked leisurely, Professor Pan, why don't you use my computer to continue? After Professor Pan came back to his senses, he handed his USB drive to Bei Yunj and said worriedly, this computer seems to have been infected by a virus. If you use my USB drive, will your computer also? No. Bei Yunj took the USB flash drive and inserted it without any hesitation. Seeing this, Wang Guanchen's lips curled into a sneer. From the looks of it, this top scorer from the physics department was also brainless. Professor Pan's USB drive carried a virus. Once it was connected to another computer, the system would immediately crash. Wang Guanchen had a look of understanding on his face as he waited for Bei Yunj to make a fool of herself in the front row. However, he did not expect that after 1 or 2 minutes, he would discover that there was nothing wrong with Bei Yunj's computer. How could this be? His face darkened as he continued to operate the keyboard. He planned to hack into Bei Yunj's computer again. However, when Wang Guanchen was attacking Bei Yunj's system, he did not realize that Bei Yunj was aware of his actions. Bei Yunj, you seem to have been infected by a virus. The face of the department bell changed. Wang Guanchen, who was sitting in the back seat, pursed his lips. However, before he could laugh, he heard Bei Yunj chuckle softly. She smirked and said unhurriedly, is that so? Not bad, there are still people who like to court death in my hands. Chapter 1308. Before the others could react, Bei Yunj's fingers moved across the keyboard at lightning speed. However, her expression was still cold and indifferent. At the same time, the screen of Wang Guanchen's computer in the back row suddenly turned blue. Wang Guanchen's heart skipped a beat. Before he could come back to his senses and try to salvage the situation, the startup sound from the computer suddenly became louder. Immediately after, the internal components of the computer seemed to be unable to withstand the high-voltage drive. In less than 30 seconds, it directly collapsed and turned black. Wang Guanchen was not the only one who was shocked. Everyone was shocked by the sound and could not react for a long time. Crap, what's happening? Someone asked. Whose computer exploded? It can't be. Is there such a trashy computer in this day and age? Which brand is it? Let me see. It seems to be Wang Guanchen's computer. Everyone's discussion stopped. After hearing this, Wang Guanchen's face turned extremely black. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the mouse and his knuckles turned white. Just now, someone had hacked into his system? Wang Guanchen looked up and happened to meet Bei Yunj's casual gaze. He saw the other party snort softly and then turn around. It was very obvious. This person did not take him seriously at all. After a moment of panic, Wang Guanchen felt an extreme sense of humiliation. However, was the person who had just counterattacked his system really Bei Yunj? Wasn't she a physics student? How could she do this? Even the top computer experts of Confederation 191 could not directly disable a computer in a few minutes. Furthermore, this was a top-notch computer that he had specially customized. Wang Guanchen felt as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat and his entire body stiffened. This was because he did not even know when the other party had hacked into his computer. However, not only did the other party counterattack his system, but she also directly disabled his computer. Not long after, a few of the boys who were still playing games suddenly felt their internet connection lag, and immediately went offline. Crap! The school's network exploded? The boys widened their eyes. What's happening? My data is also lagging? Soon after, the boys who were playing games realized that no matter how they tried, they could not log into the game. They were so angry that their faces turned green. Professor Pan, you can start now. Bei Yunj placed the computer on the podium and passed the mouse to Professor Pan. Wang Guanchen's strongest feeling was, Bei Yunj was the reason why these people were suddenly disconnected from the game. Crazy? How is that possible? Wang Guanchen muttered to himself, denying his own thoughts. Impossible. That was impossible. How could this be done by a woman? However, the computer that had been burned internally was placed in front of him at this moment. He had no choice but to face this fact with his scalp numb. Bei Yunj from the physics department was definitely not a pushover. After the meeting, Wang Guanchen passed by Bei Yunj with his broken computer. He unconsciously tightened his grip on the laptop. Just when he thought that Bei Yunj would not speak, he heard Bei Yunj ask casually, I heard that you have a problem with me? This was the first time that Wang Guanchen had been in such close contact with Bei Yunj. He could even see the coldness in her eyes and the pressure she was giving off. Before he could say anything, Bei Yunj reached out and patted the laptop he was holding. Her lips curled into a playful smile. You can look for me. If you drag anyone else into this, it won't be the computer that will be disabled. Wang Guanchen suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He knew that Bei Yunj was talking about him messing with Professor Pan. Chapter 1309. Wang Guanchen felt a chill run down his spine when Bei Yunj stared at him with a faint smile. She really did it. After Bei Yunj left, Wang Guanchen finally came to his senses. Then he immediately made an international call. The other party picked up. Why are you calling me at this time? Wang Huiying said impatiently. Wang Guanchen's expression was ugly, but he asked almost urgently, Sister, do you know anyone from Yunqing? He didn't believe that there was someone more powerful than Confederation 191 in Yunqing University. Nonsense, how could I? Halfway through her sentence, Wang Huiying seemed to have remembered something bad and her face turned livid. What's wrong? What happened to you? Wang Guanchen gritted his teeth, his eyes full of unwillingness. Nothing happened. I'm enrolled in Yunqing University, but I'm afraid of offending someone I shouldn't. Wang Huiying laughed out loud and said expressionlessly, You're a probationary member of Confederation 191. Are you afraid of a group of inexperienced students? She changed the topic. Wang Huiying gritted her teeth. However, I should remind you that there is indeed someone you can't afford to offend in Yunqing. It's very likely that she's in the same school and major as you. The same major? Wang Guanchen frowned unconsciously. Shouldn't she be in the physics department? Half a year ago, someone from Yunqing participated in our Confederation 191's training camp, and she won first place. Wang Huiying's eyes were gloomy, and her voice was as cold as ice. She took a deep breath. I've asked my friend. She's developing in the computer field in Yunqing. She won first place in Confederation 191? Wang Guanchen asked in disbelief, and then he remembered the previous rumor. At the beginning of this year, a very young girl from Country A came. She was a dark horse from Training Camp 191, and she crushed Wang Huiying to the ground. So this person who even crushed a top genius like Wang Huiying was actually from Yunqing? But he couldn't figure it out. Since she had this ability, why did she continue to study in university? Wouldn't she grow faster if she went directly to the laboratory and was fed top resources by the capital or the country? Wang Guanchen hesitated for a moment, but quickly dismissed the idea that Bei Yunj was the person Wang Huiying was talking about. Bei Yunj could beat Wang Huiying? What a joke. Bei Yunj was several years younger than Wang Huiying. What's wrong? As a member of the Wang family, you can't even compare to a student of Yun University? Wang Huiying's tone was sarcastic. Wang Guanchen clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. She's just a physics student. I don't know where she learned this unorthodox method. She hacked my computer. Trash, you're a disgrace to me. Wang Huiying coldly rebuked. Wang Guanchen did not dare to refute her. Wang Huiying doesn't know what she has done to the people in Yunqing. She suppresses her anger and says, I have a seminar in Yunqing in a few days. I want to see with my own eyes how you earn back the Wang family's dignity. Do you understand? Wang Guanchen's expression instantly brightened and he became excited. I understand, sister. As long as Wang Huiying came, no matter how arrogant that person from the physics department was, he could only be trampled on. After hanging up the phone, Wang Guanchen looked at the computer and sneered. He threw it into the trash can. The gala at Yun University was 2 days away. She didn't know where Jasmine got the news, but Bei Yunj suddenly received all kinds of dresses, accessories, and daily clothes from Jasmine's father. Chapter 13:10. Bei Yunj had always been resistant to receiving gifts from her parents, but if she returned it, Jasmine would probably start to be sensitive and sad again. Therefore, Bei Yunj could only give Higgins some shares in return. Jasmine's father was shocked and thought that Bei Yunj wanted to buy their family business. Even the mild-tempered Shang Yan almost lost his composure when he found out that Bei Yunj had casually given him shares. There was no one else who was more prodigal than this person. In the rehearsal hall. Is this a Gus gown? Song Yao froze. Gus was the #1 fashion company in our nation, and the price of their gowns was famous for their sky-high prices. An ordinary custom-made gown cost at least 200,000 yuan, while high-end custom-made gowns cost millions. Bei Yunj glanced at the gown on the table, but even Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing picked up their suits instinctively when they heard Gus. They did not dare to let the dust on the table get on the clothes. No way, Master Pei. You're borrowing Gus for a school party? Lu Yuanxi was in disbelief. I didn't borrow it. Bei Yunj frowned. At the thought of Jasmine's family sending her clothes and accessories every month as if they were going bankrupt, she felt a little impatient. You bought it? Chu Zhixing was also shocked. Master Pei, this gown costs at least 200,000 yuan. Only Song Yao felt that something was wrong with the gown in her hand. She had seen Yu Manran borrow Gus's high-end custom-made gown before. The fabric and craftsmanship were amazing. It was said that a high-end custom-made gown required 700 hours of embroidery alone, so it was not unreasonable for the gown to be so expensive. However, the gowns Bei Yunj placed here were not inferior to Yu Manran's high-end custom-made gown at all. In fact, the craftsmanship was even more complicated and exquisite. Yunj, are these high-end custom-made gowns? Song Yao asked. Are you kidding me? Master Pei, you can't waste money like this even if you're rich. Gus's high-end custom-made gown costs at least 7 million yuan. Lu Yuanxi's scalp turned numb. Although their Lu family was rich, other than important occasions, the women in the family would not burn money to wear Gus's high-end custom-made gowns. Besides, Gus's high-end custom-made gowns were only available to top members. Most people had a price but no supply. But, Song Yao wanted to say something but hesitated. Is it really not? Even though she had never seen these two pieces of jewelry in the show before. You don't like it? Bei Yunj put her phone back in her pocket. No. Song shook her head immediately. This gown was the most beautiful gown that she had worn before. Master Pei, I can't afford to return this gift of yours. Lu Yuanxi wondered if he should get Bei Yunj to go to his company to choose a suite. Bei Yunj laughed lazily. I won't say much. A father's love is silent. Speechless was speechless, in the venue. The Bei Yunj's WDO wear, dress. Where to, I've seen this dress before. It's worth more than 100,000 yuan. The girls were extremely excited. Qin Youjiao glanced at Cheng Zihuai, who was not far away, and said to them with a smile, It's good that you don't mind. Apart from the dancers, Qin Youjiao and Yu Ling had prepared their own gowns. Qin Youjiao had spent more than 1 million yuan to prepare a custom-made WDO gown, while Yu Ling had a Gus gown that cost more than 500,000 yuan. It seems like Miss Qin is planning to outshine everyone. Yu Ling could not hide her jealousy towards Qin Youjiao. Even though Qin Youjiao had left the Qin family, she could still buy a gown that cost more than 1 million yuan. And this gown of hers was given to her by Fu Yan for free. Chapter 13:11. Elder young miss was the elder young miss after all. She was different from an ordinary commoner like her. Yu Ling adjusted the frozen expression on her face and made up her mind to get Fu Yan buy back. How can that be? This gown isn't that expensive. A dark look flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes as she said with a smile. Originally, Qin Yojiao had planned to spend a lot of money to buy a custom-made high-end brand that she often used to steal the limelight. In the end, because she was chased out of the Qin family, 4 big brands cancelled her membership and she could only wear WQ's custom-made gown now. Fortunately, WQ had developed well in the past few years. She heard that they were applying for advanced custom-made gowns and certification by the union, so it was not considered bad. A gown that's close to 1,000,000 yuan is almost comparable to a custom-made gown. Yojiao, you're too humble. Yu Ling said with a smile, her eyes filled with mockery. Some people won't spend so much money to buy a gown such as Song Yao, who still has to repay her debts. After the Song Corporation went bankrupt, Mrs. Song had been making up for the Song Corporation's debts. Later, even when Song Yao entered the entertainment industry, all the money she earned was used to repay her debts. 1,000,000 yuan gown? How could Song Yao have the right to dream about it? At this thought, Yu Ling's jealous and gloomy mood calmed down. It was not that no one was in a worse state than her. Yu Ling smirked. The gala was about to start and the students below the stage were also excited. Because this year's Yun University Gala was more exciting than before. After all, not only was there Qin Yojiao from the International Musicians Association among the freshmen this year, there was also Song Yao, a popular starlet. It was very exciting. Without anyone noticing, 2 more people appeared in the front row. Will Ger see me sitting so close? Lin Lanjun was dressed tightly, but there was a hint of a smile in her voice. Beside her, Professor Pan pouted. You used to be the head of a branch of Yun University. Why are you still hiding when you're entering the school? I don't want to affect Ger. Professor Pan's tone was envious. You're the luckiest in our generation to have such a beautiful and smart granddaughter. I think she'll be able to bring glory to the country in the future. Lin Lanjun was silent for a moment. I'd rather she be more ordinary and not have to work so hard and bear so much pressure. You don't know how lucky you are. Lin Lanjun shook her head and chuckled. Soon the performance. Yun University's performances were all very unique, especially the performances brought by the art branch. It was refreshing. Half an hour later, everyone was looking forward to the last few performances with great interest. Qin Yojiao and Yu Ling were the finale. Even though they had already performed more than 10 acts before, when Qin Yojiao and the rest appeared, the audience still cheered loudly. So beautiful. Why are they all dressed like princesses? Are you stupid? Qin Yojiao was wearing a custom-made gown from WQ, and the price was almost as expensive as a high-end gown. Yu Ling's gus didn't seem to be a seasonal gown, but the cheapest gus was at least 200,000 yuan. *CK These 2 are here to suppress everyone. Don't talk about it anymore. I just checked. The dancers' dresses cost more than 100,000 yuan. Miss Qin is still the center of attention. Seeing that her limelight had been completely stolen by Qin Yojiao, Yu Ling's expression did not look too good, but she could only force a smile. At this time, the person in charge of Qin Yojiao's stage play reluctantly went backstage to remind Bei Yunji's team to get ready for the stage. When he looked up and saw the 3 of them after changing, he was almost stunned on the spot. Were they acting out a sniper team from the aristocratic era of the last century? Chapter 13:12. Chu Zhixing and Lu Yuanxi were wearing black suits that accentuated their figures. One was cold and noble, while the other was elegant and modest. On the other hand, Song Yao, who was clutching her chest awkwardly, was wearing a light grayish-blue waist-length dress. The fluffy hem of the dress hung down with textured folds, and the golden blue scales and gems and pearls made this dress look elegant and dreamy. The person in charge blushed inexplicably and started to stutter. Why, you're up next. You can get ready. Where's Bei Yunji? Here. Bei Yunji's lazy voice sounded as her slender fingers gently lifted the champagne-colored curtain. What entered her eyes was, the girl was wearing a red satin high-slit gown. Her aura was languid and seductive. Her skin was cold and fair and her black hair was casually tied up. There were a few strands of hair loosened by her ears and hung by her slender neck. This waistline and long legs were simply a sculpture with a golden ratio. The boys held their breaths and stood rooted to the ground in a daze. Okay, I got it. Bei Yunji walked over. As the high slit of her dress swayed, her snow-white long legs made people's hearts race. The boys looked away instinctively and coughed. They did not dare to look at Bei Yunji anymore. Of course, they knew that Bei Yunji was good-looking and could not even ignore the charm in her eyes. However, that was because she was reserved and under her sharpness. However, once she became serious, no one would survive this visual feast. Let's wait outside. Lu Yuanxi grabbed one in each hand and dragged the other two out. Song Yao could not help but feel nervous when Pei Yunj stared at her with a faint smile. Yunj, if you look at me like this, I'll be nervous on stage. This gaze that could kill both men and women should not be smiling and flirting with people like this. Bei Yunj was speechless. Bei Yunj was outside the door, wandering in an empty corridor. However, she did not expect someone to suddenly grab her wrist and pull her to another corner. Bei Yunj's eyes had just turned cold when she suddenly smelled a cold and familiar scent on the other party. She leaned against the wall and smiled. It's cold, brother. Only then did the man realize that Bei Yunj was wearing a red dress with a hollow back. He didn't have time to bring the girl to his side. Suddenly, Pei Yunj pushed him against the wall and pinned him down. Did anyone see you when you came? Bei Yunj's question sounded as if they were having an affair, which made the man, who felt that he was being pressed down, raise his eyebrows. But in fact, Bei Yunj knew very well that this man's looks would attract a lot of attention once he entered the school. What's wrong? Can't I show my face? The man casually leaned against the wall and sneered. His warm and cool fingertips were caressing her smooth back in the midst of chaos. Bei Yunj couldn't help but shudder. No. Bei Yunj forced herself to calm down. When the man saw the girl's expressionless face, he felt that the girl was not as clingy as before. A short while later, Bei Yunj heard the man ponder for a moment before he said leisurely, "She likes the new and hates the old. That's pretty good." Without waiting for Bei Yunj to explain, the man suddenly bent down, wrapped his arm around the girl's slender waist, and leaned closer. Washidu's low and sexy voice burned her ears. "Yunyun, did I serve you for nothing? Washidu, this is school." Bei Yunj was not intimidated by this sentence. Just as expected. The moment she looked up, she saw the man leaning against the wall lazily, staring straight at her. Chapter 13:13. A few seconds later. Bei Yunj reached out and tugged at the hem of the man's suit jacket. "Restrain yourself a little." When the man heard this, he laughed softly as if he was asking her seriously, but even his peach blossom eyes were seductive. "Yunyun, how should I restrain myself?" Bei Yunj almost couldn't hold it in when she was stared at by such a fixed gaze. After coming back to her senses, she said, "We're in public. Be careful." The man leaned lazily against the wall and raised his eyebrows slightly. Soon, his slender and well-defined fingers casually unbuttoned his suit jacket. It was clearly an extremely ordinary action, but the man made her blush and her heart race. Coupled with his bewitching gaze, he was simply lustful. He opened his arms towards Bei Yunj and curled his lips lightly, looking as if he was at her mercy. Then, "Yunyun, do you want to hug me?" Bei Yunj was extremely bewitched by the man's fixed gaze. Just as she reached out her hand unconsciously, she suddenly heard other voices around her. However, before Bei Yunj could retract her hand, the man suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms. Bei Yunj froze for a few seconds. She slowly turned her head and saw the person in charge looking at Bei Yunj in horror as she pinned the man whose face could not be seen clearly against the corner of the wall. However, surprisingly, the person who was being pinned down seemed to be in a good mood. The man seemed to be whispering to Bei Yunj with a smile, "Yunyun, be gentle with me. I didn't see anything." The person in charge felt that he had seen something he shouldn't have. Bei Yunj, Sung Su saw that when the man came out, even his white shirt was wrinkled and there seemed to be a faint lipstick mark on his chest. The man's posture was casual, but he gave off the vibe of a refined scum. He looked as if he had just come out after doing something that made his face blush and his heart race. "Master Du, where did your tie go?" After Tsung Su asked, the man glanced at him coldly and he suddenly sobered up. He wanted to strangle himself to death. Other than Miss Pei, who else had the ability to take away Master Du's tie? On the stage. Yu Ling's stage play coupled with Song Yao's cello made the audience intoxicated. They were even more obsessed with the beauty of the artistic girl on stage. As expected of a place where beauties gathered. The moment Qin Yojiao came out, there was already a situation where she was the center of attention. At this moment, someone had taken a video of Qin Yojiao, who was as beautiful as a fairy, instantly became popular online. Hashtag Qin Yojiao Yun performance, hashtag Qin Yojiao cello, hashtag these two terms also slowly became trending. However, if a discerning person observed carefully, they would realize that the trending topic this time had been premeditated for a long time. Dozens of marketing accounts had entries almost at the same time, and even included Qin Yu's name, mocking the Qin family's real young lady for not having any artistic cells. 666. Is this a game for the rich? The dancers are wearing WQ's dress. Oh my god. Even the big shots in Yun City wouldn't casually buy a gown that costs millions, right? After all, the gown is only worn once. My Jiaoya is too pretty. She's really a princess on the run. A gown costs millions. Even if she's not the Qin family's biological daughter, a princess is a princess. A pheasant isn't worthy of carrying the princess's shoes, doghead. At the same time, Qin Youjiao's performance had already ended. The enthusiastic reaction below the stage made the corners of her lips curl up, knowing that she had already won. Chapter 13-14. After leaving the stage, Qin Youjiao was surrounded by everyone. Youjiao, so you prepared such a big surprise. This dress is too beautiful. The song is also nice. It's actually an original. No wonder she's a member of the International Musicians Association. Everyone's eyes landed on Qin Youjiao. Behind her, Yuling's smile was a little stiff and her expression was dark. Even when Song Yao was still the elder young miss of the Song family, she had never been ignored like this. I'm just throwing a brick to attract jade. Yunja's performance next should be more worth looking forward to. Qin Youjiao said casually, but a cold glint flashed past her eyes. I heard that they also arranged their own songs. They should be very good too. Youjiao is too humble. It's impossible for her to compare to you. You're the only member of the International Musicians Association in the country. The people below the stage fought to please Qin Youjiao. After all, it could be seen from this gown that even without the Qin family, Qin Youjiao was someone who lived in flowers and applause. Qin Youjiao sat in the first row and turned on her phone. She scrolled to her trending topic and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. This time, no matter what Bei Yunj wanted to use to fight with her, she would trample it into the ground and never be able to raise her head. It might even become the shame of her life. At this thought, Qin Youjiao glanced at the people who were recording behind and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Soon, Cheng Zihuai walked over and took off his suit jacket gentlemanly, draping it over Qin Youjiao. It also caused a commotion below the stage. Not long after, the last program started and the spotlight dimmed. Song Yao and the rest were ready to go on stage. Was Master Pei captured by aliens? Why isn't she here yet? Lu Yuanxi tugged at his tie in frustration, seeing that Bei Yunj was still not here. You guys go first. Song Yao was about to ask Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing to go first. Fortunately, the person they were looking for appeared in the next moment. I'm here. However, when Bei Yunj appeared, the few of them glanced at her situation and their eyelids twitched. Master Pei, I understand that you're young and impetuous, but you should take care of your body, right? He looked over. Bei Yunja's black hair, which had been neatly tied up, was now in a mess. Her lipstick had also been smeared across the side of her face. Her gaze was cold, but the corners of her eyes were still slightly red. At the mention of this, Bei Yunj really wanted to lock up a certain shameless man in a men's college. In the long corridor backstage, Bei Yunj had originally thought that Huashidu would more or less feel a little apologetic after doing something disgraceful, so she had no qualms about messing with him. She pulled the man's tie and wrinkled his neatly ironed white shirt. He wouldn't let himself be at a disadvantage. Unexpectedly, just as Bei Yunj finished tugging at the man's tie, she heard Huashidu suddenly laugh softly. The next moment she was pressed against the wall by him. She even said that what she did was not bullying. He was teaching her how to bully him next time. Hence, Bei Yunj proudly tied her hands with the tie she had pulled off herself and placed it behind her back. She had no choice but to listen to this dog of a man whispering lewd words in her ear, until she could not drag it on any longer. Bei Yunj could only numbly say a lot of things that dog of a man liked to hear. She even agreed to Huashidu's crazy request. Only then did she manage to escape. Why are you still holding the tie? After asking, the three of them looked at Bei Yunj's hand. There were still red marks on her slender and fair forearm. Bei Yunj was speechless. Huashidu, you're gone. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.